Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Good evening. I would like to open the meeting for the Falmouth Select Board. It is Monday, April 3rd, 2023. It is now 6 o'clock, and I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with ASPE Unit A, and we will return to open session at 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
By roll call.
Roll call.
By roll call.
Brown, aye. Patterson.
Thank you.
Scott Price, aye.
Szymanski, aye.
Taylor, aye. Thank you. I will open the open session of the Falmouth Select Board meeting. It is Monday, April 3rd, 2023. It is now 6:32, and the board is returning from executive session where we discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with AFSCME Unit A, and we agreed to the contract that was presented by Mr. Johnson Stott. Is there anything you'd want to say about that?
Just happy to have this negotiation complete. It went well. I think both sides were really satisfied. It's a 3-year agreement effective fiscal year 2023, 2024, 2025.
Great. Thank you for your work on that. I would ask you to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will go to proclamations, and I know we do have one. Ms. Scott Price?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whereas the town of Falmouth benefits from the graceful canopy of tree limbs that shade us from the blazing summer sun, purify our air of contaminants, provide a peaceful respite from the ordinary world, and generally beautify our community. And whereas the town has been recognized by a national program and is known far and wide as, quote, Tree City. And whereas the Falmouth Tree Warden, Falmouth Garden Club, and Falmouth Public Schools recognize the aesthetic value of the beautiful trees of Falmouth by organizing a day to celebrate the purity and strength exemplified by a statuesque tree and all living green things, and thereby honor the trees of Falmouth by singing songs, sharing thoughts, and teaching more about the value of our trees. And now, therefore, we, Nancy R. Taylor, Angela Scott Price, Samuel H. Patterson, Douglas C. Brown, and Scott Zielinski, as the Select Board of the Town of Falmouth, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the great seal of the Town of Falmouth to be affixed this day, Monday, April 3rd, 2023.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion amongst the board?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we gonna have another big Arbor Day celebration?
Ah,
There's the man to answer.
there he
Good
is.
evening, Jeremiah Pearson, tree warden for the town of Falmouth. We are having another pretty big Arbor Day celebration at Goodwill Park this year,
Oh, really?
right by the new extension from the bike path. We're going to be planting a lot of trees and actually a lot of native plants and shrubs along that just to make it pop. So we're going to have a bunch of different companies there, and as well as some students this year, not as many in past years, but we'll have some kids from Morse Pond helping us out, so it should be another good turnout.
Great.
And you guys are all welcome to come.
It's boots and shovels?
Yeah, it's April 28th,
Hey, great.
all right?
I have another question.
The schools love it. Mr. Patterson?
I'm a frequent walker around Long Pond, and it always bothers me that we still have that cleared area next to that raw water pump station.
Yeah.
When they literally wiped out all those beautiful trees and then stored all their pipe, which is understandable. But are we going to replant that?
Last year, the church did plant some white oaks along there. I don't know if they took, because there were saplings, so the deer might have eaten them, but we can definitely take another look at that. Get it.
Thanks.
I think we still have to vote? All in
Okay,
favor?
yes, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Any recognitions from the board?
I'm not thinking of anything.
Okay. We'll move on to announcements, and I will just announce that I would ask everyone to please silence your cell phones, and if anyone is audio taping or videotaping, thank you, this open meeting, to please notify the chair. Okay, we will move into public comment, and I'm going to make a comment about public comment. A recent state Supreme Court's case, Barron v. Calenda, has invalidated some of the restrictions on the deportment that our town and many others had placed on speakers at the public comment period. We will continue to have our public comment, and I must continue to enforce the 2-minute time limitation on all speakers each time. I trust the good citizens of Falmouth who choose to take this opportunity will continue to be civil. Any public comment? Okay, Mr. Doobie, your hand went up first, and then Mr. Moriarty?
I'm going to do the timer.
Please. And we will keep you to 2 minutes, and I'm going to ask that you respect that when I tell you that your time is up. Mr. Doobie, go ahead.
Thank you. In an article in this week's Falmouth Enterprise...
Introduce yourself for home,
I'm sorry.
please.
Richard Doobie,
Thank you.
Blacksmith Shop Road. In an article in this week's Falmouth Enterprise, Mr. Johnson Staub said that, quote, 3 of the 29 shotguns will be destroyed. These shotguns are short barrels, which are easy to conceal and have a wider pellet blast. The regular shotguns will be traded in. Does Mr. Johnson Staub realize that a regular shotgun can have its 18.5-inch barrel cut down to 12 inches with a regular hacksaw? Has Mr. Johnson Staub ever heard the term sawed-off shotgun? That's what it applies to. They are short-barreled shotguns after that simple procedure. Mr. Johnson Staub then goes on to say, from his research with locals, and he never spoke to me, including an officer in the police department with related expertise, the guns are highly unlikely to be used for nefarious purposes. He then explains how the guns have a value of $5,000, and he doesn't want to waste town resources. It appears that the town's position on this is that $5,000 is the price for placing deadly weapons that are unlikely to be used for nefarious purposes back in circulation. Approximately 2.8 million AR-15 rifles entered circulation in the U.S. last year. I am certain that the dealer who sold the AR-15 to the Nashville shooter thought it was highly unlikely that the purchaser would use the weapon to kill 3 9-year-olds, children, and 3 adults. I am tired of appearing before you on the matter of town's position on the disposition of firearms. This board seems beholden to the Falmouth Police Department more than its citizens. Article 13 passed town meeting with close to unanimous consent. That must give you a strong indication of how this town feels about being purveyors of deadly weapons. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on pickleball
Mr. Doobie, your
courts.
time is up. Thank you. I know. Go ahead, Mr. Moriarty.
Very quick. Hi, everybody. Dave Moriarty, Precinct 6, Falmouth, Massachusetts. I just want to speak quickly on an article coming up on the town meeting. Only the select board and the designated town department has the ability to grant the right to enter related to town property. Town meeting does not have the authority to grant the right or entry to land under select board control. The petition, Article 15, is advisory only, so please, I beg of you, just, you know, I have to be in front of things these days because things change on a dime around here. Please do not allow any amendments to the Article 15 as it has no standing and it is only advisory only. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moriarty. Yes, please.
Allison Leshin, Lantern Lane. Your discussion about a policy for the embarkation fund on Saturday was a start, but what is really needed is a clear process for accessing those funds. Right now, it's unclear who can access them or how. Is it individual citizens, committees, local advocacy groups, boards, employees, department heads? No one seems to know. When I was on the Transportation Committee, neither the Finance Committee nor the town department head we spoke with about it was clear on how or even if they could ask for these funds. The town manager at the time never provided an answer despite our repeatedly asking. And who gets awarded the money? Is it first come, first served, squeakiest wheel? The result of this lack of clarity is the accumulation of over $1 million in this fund and a lot more to come if the state approves the tripling of the fees you recently voted in favor of, all of which could be being put toward mitigating the effects from the ferries that continue to negatively impact the town. Everything from complete streets projects to noise studies and increased traffic enforcement on Woods Hole Road to dredging of Falmouth Harbor could be paid for by this fund. The town of Tisbury has an embarkation fee advisory committee. The town committees and departments submit requests to the committee, which vets and prioritizes them. The select board gets final say, and then requests go to town meeting for approval. I would advocate for a similar process here, something very analogous to the Community Preservation Committee. In both cases, we have a pool of money that's required to be spent in a specified way. We want all eligible products to have a fair shot at it, to be evaluated based on merit and priorities, so not first come, first served or squeakiest wheel. There could be 1 or 2 application periods per year, for example. We need a transparent process, clarity of who is eligible to ask for the money, and a fair application, evaluation, and award process. I hope you will see this discussion through until the issue is resolved and a clear system is in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Feynman Silva?
Hi, Sandra Feynman Silva, Davis Road, Precinct 2. I wasn't going to speak right now, but now that we're celebrating Arbor Day, I was very upset when I drove down Sandwich Road and saw the full clear cutting of the tract of land where the fire station is going to be. Not one shred of the mature forest that was there remains. And I feel that we have to be more attentive to this. I think it's a loss, and obviously that was the message of Arbor Day, and I think that we should have at least preserved some of that natural forest. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Noreen Cavanaugh. This board seems beholden to the FPD more than its citizens. Article 13 passed town meeting with close to unanimous consent. That must give you a strong indication of how this town feels about being purveyors of deadly weapons. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on pickleball courts, resurfacing tennis courts, new AstroTurf, but we're told it's critical to save $5,000 by placing deadly weapons in the hands of unknown purchasers. $5,000. This is not an Inspector General issue. We've been down that road before. You have the authority to have these dangerous shotguns destroyed, from town council to town manager to the BOS. You have refused to accept that apparent mandate of this town that we cannot be bought when it comes to protecting the lives of our fellow citizens. If that $5,000 means that real estate taxes must go up by $1 next year, I'll say it's a minuscule price to pay to be able to sleep with a clear conscience. If you can't follow your duty, protect the health, safety, and welfare of the town, then step down. You're endangering the town. By the way, some people rise and say this is a Second Amendment issue. You know what? The second was passed in 1791. Edward Reuben invented this jacketed bullet in 1882. The founding fathers were talking about muskets. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, we will move into the hearings. I would ask Ms. Scott Price to notice the hearing, please.
Notice is hereby given under Chapter 140, Section 183A of the General Laws as amended by Chapter 299 of the Acts of 1926 and amendments thereto, that West Falmouth Library, located at 575 West Falmouth Highway, has applied for an entertainment license and a Sunday entertainment license. A hearing will be held in the Select Board Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, March 27, 2023, at 6:45 p.m. on the above application. Per order of Select Board. Publication date Friday, March 17, 2023, Falmouth Enterprise.
Mr. Johnson-Staub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This hearing is continued from last week. The West Falmouth Library seeks an entertainment license to host periodic events that are beyond the scope of traditional library functions, some of which take place outdoors on the library grounds. The application has been reviewed by staff with no concerns raised.
And do we have the applicant or someone here for the applicant? Yes, please, come up.
I'm Susan Bergman from the West Falmouth Library.
Okay. Questions from the board regarding this application?
No, I would just comment that I thought it was a complete application, and the floor plan showed where the music would be, and everything's indoors, right? So,
Okay.
don't have
Any
any
other
questions.
questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing. I'm sorry. Do we have any public comment? I didn't see anyone. Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. Come on up.
I'm Deborah Siegel. My husband and I live on Friends Way in West Falmouth. I'm speaking for both of us, as well as a number of neighbors who could not attend this meeting tonight. And I think you may have received some emails about this. I hope you have. The West Falmouth Library is, not to put too fine a point on it, a library. No matter how hard they try to present their entertainment as educational, it's entertainment, which is why they're applying for 2 entertainment licenses. If this entertainment was limited to indoors with windows closed, it wouldn't be an issue. If this entertainment were outdoors without amplification, it wouldn't be an issue. However, it was an issue 2 or 3 times last summer. The entertainment was on the library front lawn, behind which is the actual building, then a hill, then approximately a 1/10 of a mile distance to our house. In all instances, the music and voices were unnecessarily amplified and carried into our house. And I did go down there and explain the problem and ask that the amplification be turned down. and didn't make much progress. I cite the Falmouth noise bylaws. Chapter 150-1 prohibits, quote, the use of any device to amplify the aforesaid noise, where the noise is plainly audible at a distance of 150 feet from the building, structure, vehicle, or premises on which it is produced. And, end quote, Chapter 156-11, quote, it shall be unlawful for any person within the town of Falmouth to disturb the peace of the Commonwealth by making loud noises and outcries, end quote. In addition to the increased noise from screaming leaf blowers, roaring motorcycles and trucks speeding along Route 28A, and loud amplified outdoor music at the West Falmouth Market on summer Thursdays, if these entertainment licenses are approved by you, the library will be the latest example of disturbing and illegal noise in our town. I strongly urge you on behalf of a neighborhood and respectfully request that you deny these licenses. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Jim Gray from West Falmouth. We talk about a library. In today's world, libraries have all become community centers. And the libraries perform some very useful and beneficial functions for the community. Children just barely able to walk, adults. They support the annual tree lighting ceremony that the West Falmouth Village Association has held for years. And we're very, very thankful that we have such a wonderful library that acts as a community center and supports everything that goes on in our local community. Obviously, you know, library over here has activities out on the front lawn. Main street of town, well, Route 28A is Main Street of Falmouth, West Falmouth, I'm sorry. And we need to have community centers and be able to have community within our town. So I'm fully supportive of allowing West Falmouth Market, the library, to engage things that are beneficial to the local community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Okay.
I did notice there are two events that are listed outdoors. One is the ice cream social on July 27th from 4 to 5. Sorry, I was just noting there are a couple of outdoor events here. One garden party from 5 to 7 on June 16th. Question mark garden party outdoors. Ice cream social on July 27th from 4 to 5 outdoors. Another one that says Zoom Mobile outdoors 10:30 to noon on August 5th. And then there's one that's the tree lighting indoors/outdoors from 6 to 7:30 on December 1st. The rest are all indoors.
Okay. Seeing no, yes.
Yes, I would like to state that some of those outdoor activities are weather dependent, number one. Number two, there will not necessarily be music or any kind of amplification for some, like the ice cream social and the Zoomobile.
Can you explain what the Zoomobile is?
The Zoomobile is provided by the Buttonwood Zoo in Rhode Island, and it will come over and bring live animals.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Thank you.
So could we clarify then, are you saying that the outdoor activities would not have entertainment?
The only one that we would like to have entertainment for is the garden party. And we've had entertainment for that in the past, which is very low volume entertainment, and we've never received any complaints about that.
And it's only 2 hours from 5 to 7 p.m.?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
Mr. John Staub, how many of those events require a special permit that Mr. Brown's described?
A special?
An event permit that they're requesting for this one today.
So the entertainment, this is an entertainment license, right? And so the determination that an entertainment license is needed starts with, is the public invited to come, and is it outside the scope of the normal course of business of the entity? So where some of these events are outdoors and some of the indoor events are, don't seem to be sort of typical library events, it was determined that an entertainment license was needed.
For all the ones that Mr. Brown described.
So I'm looking at the list, the full list that's in the addendum here, and
Sorry.
just going through the list, wine tasting, is arguably outside the scope of a library. Ruth Bader Ginsburg program, indoors, that's within the scope of a library. Jazz concert, again, probably outside. Hats and high tea, I'm not sure, maybe outside. Jazz concert, poetry, clearly library. So I would say, it looks like most of these, that's what, some 20
Would have to
some odd
come
events.
before us for approval?
As you're saying, instead of an entertainment license to
I'm
do-
asking who makes the determination on what they need a permit for and what they don't?
So if an entertainment license is granted, they would be able to host all of these events.
Okay, that's what I wanted
Sorry,
to get to.
misunderstood.
The one comment I'd like to make, if I could, is I'm a little confused about when you say outside the scope of the library. I have to remind you that we are an independent library, and it's crucial for us to be able to raise funds to keep the doors open. And so while these may be outside the scope of what a library typically does, for the West Falmouth Library and the Woods Hole Library, which is also an independent library, we need to raise funds in order to support the library and keep it open for our patrons.
Thank you.
I have one more.
Mr. Brown?
So when I first looked at this, I overlooked the outdoor activities because the map doesn't clearly indicate where music would take place outdoors. Is that on the patio when it says other programs and rentals use the community room? But that's written where the patio is. I'm not clear where the outdoor entertainment would be if these outdoor events had entertainment.
Some outdoor activities use just the patio and the deck that's above it, and some of them use the entire garden patio area.
Okay.
Like the ice cream social, for example, because that would also have lawn
Where
games.
that's written is where it is. That was
along
on
with it.
Okay.
On the next one, it says wine tastings.
And you can see it.
Wine tasting on the patio, I see that, right.
Any other comments from the public? Dr. Feynman Silva?
Sandra Feynman Silva, Precinct 2. I just wanted to comment that I believe that libraries should have an open concept and that they model behavior that we would like our children to embrace, which is to go to libraries for all sorts of activities. And the fact that the West Falmouth Library is expanding its offerings to encourage activities and entertainment, exposure to perhaps different kinds of music, different kinds of ways of thinking about things, and entertainment for children and families, I think that's good, and I would support this.
Thank you. Ms. Siegel?
Thank you. I would like to emphasize that the neighbors don't object to the library having these sorts of events. It's the amplification that is the problem. So if there's any way that you can put that as a control on it, that would probably solve the problem. And I also would like to point out that the West Falmouth Library now does receive, unless I'm mistaken, some funds from the town and doesn't have to do all of their fundraising by themselves. I may be mistaken in that, but that's my recollection.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would just confirm that there is a town subsidy to the library. It is a very small portion of total operating costs.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson-Staub. Any other comments from the public? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. Oh, Mr.
Just to comment that with regard to Ms. Siegel's last remarks, we do have a policy with entertainment licenses that the applicant is requested and I believe required to keep the music within the limits of the property to all practical, restraints as can be expected. I know it can't be perfect, but that's the idea. When you have these entertainment licenses, you're supposed to keep the music on your property.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any further conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Discussion amongst the board?
I've talked enough.
I don't think I've ever heard you say that before.
I'll make a motion to approve, Madam Chair.
Okay, I have a motion to approve.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further conversation amongst the board? All those in favor of approving this application for the West Falmouth Library?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll move on to the second hearing. Ms. Scott Price, please notice the hearing.
Notice is hereby
Madam
given.
Chair, before you go,
Yes.
I am an abutter to this facility, and on advice of town council, this could affect the value of my property. Therefore, I'm recusing myself and leaving the meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patterson.
Notice is hereby given under Chapter 140, Section 183A of the General Laws as amended by Chapter 299 of the Acts of 1926 and amendments thereto that 311 Gifford Street, OpCo, LLC, doing business as Coonamessett Inn, has applied to amend its entertainment license and Sunday entertainment license to be exercised at 311 Gifford Street, Falmouth, MA. A hearing will be held in the Select Board Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, April 3rd, 2023, at 6:45 p.m. on the above application. Publication date Friday, March 24th, 2023, Falmouth Enterprise.
Thank you, Ms. Scott Price. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant seeks approval to add outdoor entertainment on an existing deck which seats 60 people. The hours are 11 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. The applicant indicates the outdoor entertainment would end earlier but does not specify specific hours. And I should clarify, that the outdoor entertainment would end earlier but has not specified specific hours. The town received only 2 noise complaints in the recent past related to prior indoor entertainment. Both were received on the same day in 2019. There is further information from the police department in your packet. The board may want to consider setting specific hours for entertainment on the deck.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson-Staub. Is the applicant here?
I'm John Norton, General Manager.
Go ahead, sir.
John Norton, General Manager.
Okay. Questions from the board? Comments from the board?
Have you had an outdoor entertainment over there before?
Yes.
But weren't aware of the licensing, or?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Were you not aware of the licensing?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
I'm aware of it, yeah.
And how many times would you say you've had outdoor events so far?
During COVID, when we were allowed to have outdoor dining, spaced apart, and when the state let us have live music again. That's when we started, so 2020.
Okay. And so the only noise complaints you had were previous to that, at 2019, and I think that's probably when you were early on with your concert series, that you were getting started,
Yeah,
not,
yeah, the windows were open.
Not aware of the-
On Jones Road, yep. I'm
Okay.
well aware of that, yeah.
and did you hear our comments in the previous hearing about the noise not supposed to be going beyond your
Of course.
property?
Yep.
We did receive an email today from a neighbor of yours across the pond who said that the music is really loud already, and it, is carrying across the water and reverberating in their house, and they have to close the windows and sometimes use headphones, which was surprising to me. I'm not sure if you're aware of that kind of impact.
I'm not aware of that type of impact, no.
Okay.
I know there, the one day, I think that, the last day that we did entertainment on the deck when we were notified to stop.
Okay.
We had a 7-piece band out there.
Right.
Too much.
Okay.
Yeah, I am aware of that.
All right.
Would you speak again to your recommendation, Mr. Johnson-Staub?
So my recommendation was that the board consider setting specific hours for outdoor entertainment if you are inclined to approve outdoor entertainment.
Thank you.
So this says 9 to midnight.
I echoed the current entertainment license that we have. I wasn't sure what to write for the application, that's all.
I just want to clarify, so Peter, you're recommending different hours than the 9 to 12? Because that's what I see on the license.
Right, so, although when I look at the application, it says 11 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. There may be.
Oh, okay. I was looking at the actual license, not that. Okay.
So, yeah, so that was looking at the application. So, so there could be different hours for indoors and outdoors.
I see.
Mr. Brown?
So, Madam Chair, given that our anti-noise bylaw kicks in at 10 o'clock, I wonder if that might be a more appropriate time for the outdoor entertainment to move inside?
I think that seems
I
reasonable.
think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Would that be something you think could work?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, our weddings go till about 11 o'clock midnight, but they're all indoors. Occasionally, the DJ would like to put a small speaker on the deck.
Yeah.
But for the most part, Thursdays, Fridays, when we have live entertainment out there, 8:30, we're done.
Yeah.
So 10 o'clock would be beautiful,
Okay.
just to give us a little extra room or something,
Okay.
I like that idea.
Any comments from the public regarding this application for a license? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Therese Marshall. I live in the Grassmere neighborhood across the pond from Coonamessett. Since there sounds like you mentioned in email that somebody was not happy with the music, I just thought that I would add in, I love it. My husband and I sit outside on our porch and listen to it. When they did have it at the beginning of last summer, I think it stopped later. I would not be in favor of outdoor music till midnight. I think the 10 o'clock was a great suggestion. I think I'm in favor of the new management over there and the changes that have gone on at the Coonamessett. I think it's a great asset for our neighborhood. We have the walkway and the boardwalk that, on the opposite side, we can walk over and get all the way over to the Coonamessett. That deck is lovely, and I find it festive and exciting during the summer to hear the entertainment. And it seems to be a little more life at the Coonamessett than there has been in recent years. I've been there for a long time, and I'm fully in support. Thank you.
Any other public comment regarding the application for this license? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Peter Joyle. I'm from Grassmere as well. I, like the previous speaker, we live across the pond. We actually enjoy the outside music, but we do like the idea of the 10 o'clock curfew. One side comment as far as the inside entertainment, that it seems like, and I guess there might be a challenge as far as heat, but like when there is weddings, there's music. It seems like they're opening windows or doors or those sliders, and that does get loud at night. The occasional wedding is fine, but I'm not sure exactly. This application is a little confusing, I guess, or it seems like it's pretty general. So I don't know if this is in the spirit of trying to get more music to midnight, even inside, on an ongoing basis. Are we going to compete with the Lamb McGuire's and start having music? But if doors are open and so forth, then it does get really loud. So I would just ask that consideration as far as, can it be 7 days a week? Or is it like the Thursday, Friday, Saturday is nice, and truthfully, we sit out and we listen to the music. And there's a guitar player outside on the deck, which is fine. It's not loud rock music and that type of thing, but it is nice that it closes at 10 o'clock.
Thank you for your comments.
The current application shows 7 days a week. The request is 11 a.m. to 12:30 a.m., but I think we're agreeing on 10 o'clock for the outdoor.
Even on Sunday?
Well, they got Monday through Saturday. Sunday would be a separate, and I don't know if that's been requested here. I'll have to take a look.
It has been requested.
Okay.
And it's a yes/no box on that application form, yes for Sunday entertainment.
Oh,
So
yeah,
these hours
okay,
will
right.
apply to Sundays as well.
Yeah.
So could we amend to say something like 10 for outside and 11 for inside?
Yes, you certainly could make that amendment.
The only thing with Sunday is Sunday holidays. We tend to be a big wedding day for us. You know, they can go to 11 o'clock also. That's the only time of Sunday I could foresee any entertainment being offered after 8 p.m. really. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more conversation among the board?
Just,
Brown.
are we now considering 10 o'clock outside and 11 o'clock inside as the cutoff for the music?
That was my suggestion.
That's what I heard, and
Even on Sunday?
That was my suggestion, yes.
Is that something that'll work for you?
11.
If I don't wanna
So
keep buttoning
10 p.m. for outside entertainment and 11 p.m. for inside.
No, I'm not looking to amend the inside entertainment, just the outside.
Okay.
So 12:30, I mean, we do New Year's weddings there and stuff, yeah. But I can make it due diligence to make sure the windows and sliders are closed. You know, if it becomes an issue, you know, I can give the neighbors my personal cell phone, you know, anything, you know. But yeah, that would be drastically change our business.
Yeah, it is pretty standard, the 12:30
is it?
Yeah.
Inside.
Inside. Okay.
We've had a lot of people in this spring, and we've kind of agreed that that's been our standard.
Okay. But 10 o'clock for outside.
Right.
Yeah, and we're not trying to be Lee McGuire's. The concerts are done. You know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're an institution. You know, we're just trying to get some locals on the deck. That's all. You know,
Okay.
90% locals out there when we're.
And these are all open to revocation anyway. If it
Right.
becomes a
If it
problem
becomes a-
anyway, they can be monitored, right?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Discussion among the board.
I think we've arrived at a reasonable compromise.
I think so.
Okay, so you're amending.
Amending the outdoor license to conclude at 10 p.m. and the indoor can remain at 12:30, with the understanding that the music's not supposed to travel beyond the property line when, you know, if practical. I mean, you got to do your best to try to keep that within the limits of your property. You
Windows
understand?
and doors after 10 o'clock are supposed to remain closed to
Good point.
mitigate.
And keep in mind
the,
that anti-noise
music.
bylaw that you're subject to after the 10 p.m. time.
Is that a condition that the board wants to put in the license, that after 10 p.m., windows and doors are closed when there's amplified entertainment?
I would.
I think so. You have air conditioning, right? No reason why they can't.
Yeah.
Okay.
You good with
I
that?
would agree to that.
I would move to approve as amended.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the application for the entertainment license as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to our third hearing, application to amend entertainment license, Cohog Inc. Ms. Scott Price, please notice the hearing.
Notice is hereby given under Chapter 140, Section 183A of the General Laws as amended by Chapter 299 of the Acts of 1926 and amendments thereto, that the Cohog Inc., doing business as Cohog Republic Dive Bar, has applied to amend its entertainment license to be exercised at 97 Spring Bars Road, Falmouth, MA. A hearing will be held in the Select Board Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on Monday, April 3rd, 2023, at 6:45 p.m. on the above application. Per order of the Select Board, publication date Friday, March 24th, 2023, Falmouth Enterprise.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant seeks to begin entertainment at 8 p.m. and end at 12:30 a.m., where the current license hours are 10:30 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. We do not have a record of noise complaints related to this license, though there are apartments above the bar.
Thank you. Hello?
Hi, Tom Hughes, co-owner, Cohog Republic.
Questions from the board regarding the application?
So it sounds like you just want to start earlier?
Correct.
Any other questions?
I don't see any note of any incidents or any concerns.
Is there a place of worship in direct abutter? They have no, didn't we talk about that the last time?
I feel like that did come up for some reason
It
last
did
time.
come up.
It does, but I can't think of any.
I don't think they're really direct abutters, aren't they in
In the
the?
same building.
Is
They're
it?
within 300
that's right.
feet.
There
Yeah,
is,
they're right
yeah.
they're right next door, the next space over.
Oh.
Whenever they occupy it, it's not very often. And when they do, their music is usually louder than ours, so,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Getting happy.
Any other questions from the board?
I think generally if we were to get noise complaints, it would have been later rather than earlier, and
Right.
not having any.
Sure. Comments from the public on this application? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd move approval.
I'll second it again.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the application to amend the entertainment license for Quahog Inc. Any further conversation amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Look,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to go through the consent agenda. If there are any questions or comments from the board, please notify the chair and hold the request.
Madam Chair, might I
Yes.
make a few introductory comments for the
Please.
consent agenda? Thank
Yes.
you. There are two special one-day liquor licenses on the consent agenda. In addition, the Flying Bridge Marina seeks approval of a license to sell new and used boats, also known as motor vehicles is the regulatory language there. So the plan is to sell boats, not automobiles. All applications have been reviewed by staff with no concerns. I do want to mention that an individual came to our office today and questioned whether there was a parking compliance issue with respect to the Flying Bridge getting a license to sell new and used boats. And that was reviewed today, again, by the building commissioner and the town planner. And the way they looked at this matter is that the retail space is unchanged. So there's an existing retail operation at the Flying Bridge Marina. There's no addition being proposed. It's essentially a reallocation of existing retail space. And therefore, in the opinion of the building commissioner and the town planner, there is no additional parking required. Under administrative orders, there is one change of address to clarify the unit number and a number of seasonal liquor and entertainment licenses. All applications have been reviewed by staff with no concerns raised. I recommend approval.
Thank you. Okay. Licenses, application for 3 special one-day all-alcohol liquor licenses, Falmouth Theater Guild, Highfield Theater, 58 Highfield Drive, Falmouth, 428, 430, 55, 57, 512, and 514. Second, application for a Class 1 license to buy and sell new and second-hand motor vehicles, Flying Bridge Marina, LLC, DBA.
hold.
Thank you. Third, application for a special one-day wine and malt beverage license, Noreen Kavanaugh, Unitarian Universalist Church of Falmouth, 840 Sandwich Road, East Falmouth, Saturday, 4/15/23. Administrative orders. Approve administrative change of address of an all-alcoholic beverages common victual license, DJ's Holdings, Inc., doing business as DJ's Family Sports Bar, located at 870 Main Street, Unit A, Falmouth. And then we have our 2023 seasonal annual license renewals, which I do not have to read anymore as long as they're listed on the agenda. So we have one hold. Mr. Zelinski?
A couple questions on that. So, is that license transferable?
I'm not sure. I believe so.
Are you sure or you believe so?
I'm not sure.
Then I'm not voting it until I get the answer to the question. So, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the licenses under B, which was held by Mr. Zelinski?
I would just comment that I was surprised that it's a by right use, but it is a marina front, so. I guess,
Part of their business.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that the board move the consent agenda except for B, which we will vote separately. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll vote B separately for the application for a Class 1 license to buy and sell new and second-hand motor vehicles, Flying Bridge Marina LLC, DBA Flying Bridge Marina, to be exercised at 250 Scranton Ave in Falmouth. All those in favor?
I'm sorry, Mr. Zelinski, what is your concern?
Well, number one, in the terminology, it says motor vehicles, right? If it was boats or marine vehicles, it would say marine boat, marine vehicles. The fact that the license asks for motor vehicles, my secondary question was, can that license be transferred?
Okay.
You mean, are you questioning the transfer to the person who's applying or future transfer?
Future transfer,
Okay.
with the way it's described in the application as motor vehicles and not marine vehicles.
Okay. Madam Chair,
So are you asking that if motor vehicles could then be sold in that, sold in that
not
spot?
at-
Okay. I
There would be
wasn't sure.
there would be a separate license.
Okay.
It's listed as motor vehicles, but it's characterized in the request as marine vehicles.
Right.
My secondary question was, can that license, if approved, be transferred to another location?
oh, I thought you meant to another entity.
I thought so too. So
No.
you're saying transferred to another location, not
That's
to another
owned in
person?
common ownership.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I would like to know that too.
I thought the question was, could a new owner at the same location take the license? Again, I don't want to conjecture, so I guess I won't.
So I wonder if you should maybe consider tabling until we
Yep.
get better clarification on that?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
So can it be transferred to a different location? And then, I'm not sure if the other one is a question. My understanding is that motor vehicles is the correct statutory language for the license, whether it's automobile or marina. But we can, we can certainly ask if we can get a commitment that it is limited to boats and not motor vehicles. not
Certainly
automobiles.
ambiguous, I mean, in nature, by the request, the way it's drafted.
And also if it's location specific to this application.
Yes.
That's a good question.
I appreciate that.
So we will table it, and we will consider it at another time.
Do we need a vote to table?
Yes, we will need a vote to table, and I believe a vote to move the consent agenda, or did we vote that?
We voted on
Okay.
it, yeah.
Without this
Okay.
hold, I think technically it hasn't passed. You could certainly vote to hold it to clarify.
I think we would, yes.
Make a motion that we hold this for further information from town
I'll
manager.
second Mr. Brown's motion. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take two things out of order. Prior to doing business, we're going to ask Mr. Johnson Staub to give his town manager's supplemental report, and then we're going to review the minutes.
You did want to take the business items?
We're going to take the business items after. I'm going to do this before
Okay.
business.
So supplemental report.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would like to announce that I have appointed all but one of the seats for a Police Chief Citizen Advisory Panel, and this is to supplement the consultant's work, which includes resume review, background checks, written essay questions, preliminary interviews, and then a full-day assessment center with 3 police chiefs as evaluators. On that assessment center scheduled for Saturday, April 15th. On Friday, April 14th, we will have citizen panels interviewing the 4 or 5 finalists that we have for the police chief position. And the members of the Police Chief Citizen Advisory Panel that I have appointed are, and there are 3 separate panels, each has 1 staff member. One panel has Susie Hauptman and Susie Hauptman, who's our Human Services Director, as you know, Michael Kasparian, Chamber of Commerce Executive Director. Panel number 2 has Henry St. Germain, the School Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Nan Logan, a gun safety activist, and Lynn Rhodes, representing the Falmouth NAACP, the Cape Cod NAACP, I should say. Panel number 3 has Peter McConerty, DPW Director, Peggy Zuplat, Town Meeting Member from East Falmouth, and Amy Lenardi, Town Meeting Member and parent of a school-aged child from Hatchville. I also wanted to comment, moving on to the next item, I wanted to comment on the Select Board agenda being published in the newspaper. The Town Manager's Office continues to send Select Board agendas to the Falmouth Enterprise on the Wednesday before the Monday meeting every week, as has been the practice for many years. The newspaper has for many years published the agenda at no cost to the town. In recent months, some agendas have not been printed, and the editor has explained that the timing is challenging relative to their Friday publication date. She also points out there is other content that may be a higher priority than the Select Board agendas. I do want to emphasize that the open meeting law does not require that the agenda be published in the newspaper. We do know that many in our community find it a convenient way to find out what the Select Board is doing, and I would note that the agendas are available on the town website, and anyone interested can sign up to have a link to the agenda automatically sent via email or text by signing up for Notify Me on the town website. And if anyone is looking to access that, simply go to the town website and search for alerts and follow the link to set up a Notify Me account. And there are various other things that one can subscribe to get automatic alerts for. Lastly, for the supplemental report, upcoming meetings. April 10th, as you know, is the annual town meeting. We will post a meeting as usual for 6:30, immediately preceding the town meeting. We are also posting a meeting for 9 p.m. on the night of town meeting, so the board can vote to place the override on the election ballot consistent with the town meeting vote in the event that the dollar amount changes. And that has been coordinated with the moderator. You then have a regular meeting April 24th, a regular meeting May 1st, and then there's a break and a regular meeting May 22nd. And that concludes my supplemental report.
Thank you. We will review the minutes of public session September 12th, 2022.
Madam Chair, may I just back up one second?
Yes.
Forgive me.
Absolutely.
The agenda item that can you explain that a little bit better to me? Is it we're going to try when we can to put it in the paper, or we're going to discontinue putting it in the paper? Because there's a vast amount of people in this town that aren't computer savvy, and they depend on that newspaper posting for that agenda.
Right, so what I'm saying...
What are we saying?
Sure. We are going to continue what we have always done, which is we always send the agenda to the newspaper. We don't pay for it, and we never have, so we can't control what the newspaper does.
But it's a matter of money. Is that what I'm hearing? So if we paid for it, it would get in, correct?
I believe that, yeah, if we paid for it, then perhaps we could get it in every single week.
And we have had this conversation, Mr. Johnson-Staub and I have had this conversation because two people do depend on it. And the Enterprise did send an email saying that they sometimes can do it and sometimes they won't. They've given us no commitment. There was a comment about space and what's important and what may be less important. So one of the pieces that I would like to consider moving forward is if, to cost it out. And we've talked about that, costing it out with the Enterprise.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, we will have to just decide how big a spot and hold that spot every week, and if we have to pay, we have to pay.
I think the cost would be about in the neighborhood of $400 to $700 per meeting.
Per meeting?
Per week?
$700 per meeting, per agenda.
Per week.
Wow.
That can't be right.
Well, it's the
Well,
placement.
That's it. That's an estimate based on what we pay for legal ads. Now, maybe we can negotiate a deal with the Enterprise. That's not a quote. That's not a firm number. but that's a ballpark, and I'm happy to price it out and get a formal quote from the
Thank you.
newspaper.
And maybe we could reconsider the placement, because it's, front page, second page, they're expensive.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I would think if it's a legal ad, it's probably not going to be on the front page. But again, that is a conversation we can have with the newspaper.
That would be great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the minutes of Monday, September 12th, 2022. Mr. Patterson.
I found them to be quite complete.
I
and
did too.
Substantially correct. So
Yeah.
I would move the approval of the minutes of Monday, September 12th, 2022.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we will move on to business. Application to Mass Housing for project eligibility. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant, John DeSangro, has applied to Mass Housing for site approval for a Chapter 40B comprehensive permit to construct 12 units of rental housing. The town has 30 days to submit comments to Mass Housing regarding the proposal. Town staff met with the applicant and reviewed the application. We did not identify significant concerns. The applicant has indicated he will seek funding from the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund to offset the cost to make all 12 units affordable. So without subsidy, then this would be a 40B, 25% of the units would be affordable. With a subsidy, potentially all 12 would be affordable. Included in your packet is a letter drafted by Jed Cornock, town planner, based on comments received from staff, and an assessment of how this project fits with the town's affordable housing needs and goals based on the town's housing production plan and the local comprehensive plan. The purpose of this agenda item is to seek board input on the project that we might incorporate into this draft letter.
I have a
Mr.
question.
Brown?
Does the fact that we're incentivizing this constitute a local initiative project?
It could, but that's not how it has been applied for.
Okay. The next question, which is led by that question, is do we have any influence on requesting denitrification in the septic? Since it's on the next future phase of sewer planning, which is several years off, more than several. I mean, we don't know exactly, but 8 to 10 minimum, right? Do you know how far it is out?
Yeah, if it's in the 7 to 10 range, I think you're in the right ballpark.
Yeah.
Right. So which is, on the one hand, it's not right away. On the other hand, sewer's coming there a lot sooner than most places in town.
Okay.
So to your question, we could certainly talk about a denitrification requirement in the context of a subsidy, I suppose, although if we were to have to pay for the cost of that might be, that would increase the subsidy required substantially. And to date, we haven't used Falmouth Affordable Housing Funds for paying for the cost of denitrification.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Any input into that letter? Oh, Mr. Patterson?
Yeah, I guess I just want to think that we have to ask ourselves, what's the percentage of contribution by a few of these affordable housing projects when you compare it to all of the septic systems throughout the town? So I'd like to make sure we take a balanced look at this and say, is this where we want to apply, an extra burden, cost burden, when we're in a housing crisis? I mean, I don't think there's anybody that can doubt that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need a vote on this, Mr. Johnson-Staub?
I don't. If the board, I can just take the sentiment of the board. If there are no comments on the letter, then I'll submit it as substantially as drafted.
I like the fact that the applicant is willing to make them all rental, and they seem to be, by their nature, somewhat affordable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Looking forward to supporting it.
I would be supportive of this application.
I would as well. Application for change of manager of all alcohol common victor license, Town Hall Partners LLC, doing business as Timber, located 23 Townhouse Square in Falmouth. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
The new manager has been invited to attend, so the board can meet him and reiterate that he is responsible for compliance with applicable laws and regulations.
Okay. Come on up, sir. Whoa.
So during the entertainment license, I recused myself, having a family member who was working at this building. That's no longer the case. That family member is back to working outdoors, so
Thank you for that update, Mr. Brown. Appreciate it. Yes.
Good evening. For the record, Kevin Clower. I'm here tonight representing Town Hall Partners DBA Timber. I'm joined tonight by Edmund Reed. Eddie has been hired as the new general manager for Timber, and we'd like to have him named as the manager on the liquor license. Eddie has a long history in this industry. He's previously been the manager of record and the general manager of both Quick's Hole Tavern and British Beer Company in Hyannis. So he's very familiar with the requirements of acting in this capacity, but I can let him certainly speak for himself.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Edmund Reed, the new general manager of Timber, and I'm looking forward to working with the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? Comments?
Oh, I have one.
Mr. Brown?
Are you still currently the manager in the other places, or is this,
Nope.
this will be the only thing?
Just here.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. That's the only one I have.
Any other questions? Do you need a vote, Mr. Johnson-Staub?
Yes, we do.
I'd move approval.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further conversation amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Just a final comment, what Doug Jones used to always say, you know you're responsible for the liquor and everyone who's in there consuming it.
I heard Doug's voice.
And their behavior.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Sustainability Coordinator job description. Mr. Johnson-Staub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We wanted to put these two job descriptions, starting with the Sustainability Coordinator position, on the agenda for select board input in light of some of the concerns that have been raised by advocates who brought these job descriptions forward. And I just wanted to review the history briefly and the context and offer some comments as to why I drafted the job descriptions the way I did. So there was a non-binding petition article approved at the April 2022 town meeting recommending that the select board create a sustainability director position to, among other things, and this is a brief quote from the article, to integrate sustainability and coastal resiliency policies and programs into activities of all town departments, end quote. At your strategic planning sessions, I proposed a sustainability coordinator position, which would not be a department head. The select board identified this position as a priority for funding in the FY 2024 budget. After conferring with Conservation Administrator Jennifer Lincoln and consultants at the Woods Hole Group, I prepared a job description for this position, which is primarily focused on oversight of implementing energy conservation and renewable energy projects to deliver tangible results. I did not include coastal resilience as a central component of the job duties because it requires a very different knowledge base and skill set. Under the town charter, the select board has the authority to create new positions by vote of a 4/5 majority of the select board. Also under the charter, determining the functions and duties of employees rests with the town manager as chief administrative officer of the town. Nevertheless, I seek the board's input on the scope of this proposed position in light of the concerns raised by the advocates for the petition article.
So conversation amongst the board about the job description for the Sustainability Coordinator.
Before we talk about the actual job description, I think we need to make it clear that this is not necessarily within our purview of what we're supposed to do on the select board, is that job descriptions are supposed to be made by the town manager. I do understand that this one was originally started by town meeting, and that's part of the reason why there's some discussion around it, but I think this is something that the board in general needs to work on, is not being too in the weeds of the town manager's job, and I think this is just an example of where we may be overstepping. Now, I understand because of town meeting, and we've already talked to the moderator about needing to have these conversations, they're not had on town meeting floor, but I just felt it was important to say that I don't think this is something that we should be making a habit of.
I would agree with you. I think the only reason I put it to the board was because Mr. Johnson-Staub made a comment about the scope. But I agree that the board can create the position by a 4/5 of a vote, but that creating the job description, I agree with you, goes to the town manager. Mr. Patterson.
Relative to the scope, the only thing that I thought about, just really as a constructive suggestion, is the idea of of working to assure that the cost of energy for our citizens is manageable. Because I think that's part of sustainability in the sense that it increases the burden on citizens if they're, not able to actually pay for the energy costs that are coming down. And we've seen significant growth in cost of energy. So I would just think that that might be an objective that you could put in there, but for your consideration, that's all.
That could also be a goal.
Sure.
It doesn't have to necessarily be in the job description, but I certainly see what you're saying in terms of a goal of that position.
Right.
So I think that makes sense. Mr. Patterson. Mr. Brown?
I think a lot of the comments that we've received have focused on the fact that the people commenting have felt that this should be a management position capable of directing a department. And my comment back to those people the few times we've spoken has been that it seemed to me, I didn't think it was the best idea to create a management position when you don't have a department to go with it. It's only one person right now, so I felt like the coordinator description was more appropriate. If we find that the person comes in the first year and works and says, well, if I had 3 more guys, I could get $5 million more, and maybe then we'll switch it to a manager. And I wonder, Mr. Johnson-Staub, how much difficulty would there be in changing the description of the job and the capacity of the person in it? Are we setting ourselves up for a limited capacity that can't be expanded? Should we be considering the manager if it's something that's going to grow quickly, if it's very successful?
It's a question of reclassification potentially?
Right. So, I like the way that you've described it. It certainly can be an evolution in terms of potentially expanding the duties and responsibilities of the position later on. But that does trigger potentially a classification change, which would need to go to town meeting, and an increased salary to go along with that. Mm-hmm. So, I think my thinking is very much aligned with what you've described, that as a starting point with the budget resources that we have available, and not saying this is a department with the staff and a substantial consulting budget to go along with it, that the coordinator title was appropriate. I've budgeted a salary that, I'm certainly hopeful is going to be competitive enough to draw individuals that have some expertise and experience in this area. But until we're ready to make a commitment to a much larger budget, I feel like this is the right job description and pay grade.
And we've got to start somewhere.
And I don't think it's that big an obstacle to go back to town meeting and say, we've got something that's working well, we want to expand it. I think that would be appropriate.
I agree.
I think the recycling coordinator is a good example of that, is that it's half-time, we've been talking about making it full-time when we can, and that one's expanded.
Agreed.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
have one small concern with that. If you fund and you create a job description, it may limit that applicant. If you extend their duties beyond what they've applied for, it may work them out of a job. If you're requiring more from them than they can provide, I can see a little bit of a problem with that. If you proceed too fast with the position, or you overwhelm them, or they've applied for one position, but you're going to require more from them in the future, but you don't know what that is yet. I think that could be potentially problematic.
Sure, and that's why it has to be managed. So, I wouldn't blindly be recommending an upgrade to the position if there's a person in it who I did not feel was capable of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I wonder then, I don't want to go too far with this, but would we then, if that person had limited capacity, would we consider putting a manager above them that might have more capacity if we find we need it? Would that be something that would be practical to expect to do?
If that's, if we get to a point within the scope of the budget that, that we are able to budget 2 salaries, one at a department head level in addition to the coordinator, that's certainly an approach that we could explore. Sure.
Anything else? Okay, let's move on to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer.
Would you take a public comment on this agenda item?
Yes. We've had a lot of comments regarding this, so I'm going to keep this very tight.
I'm Judy Fenwick. I just wanted to say, I commend Rosemary Carey for getting this started back in September 2020 with Article 37, the climate change emergency. I commend the Select Board for including the hiring in its strategic plan, and I commend the acting town manager for including in the fiscal year 2024 budget message under the Select Board's strategic planning priorities section, the paragraph that talks about the sustainability committee, sustainability coordinator. And I noted it says the position has been included within the town manager's Select Board budget for now, and that was back in, I think, December of 2022. Further investigation and dialogues needed to determine the department reporting structure. So my comments are two, and quickly. I have two suggestions. One, that you expand the focus of the sustainability coordinator, or the description, to cover more areas than just energy. Energy seems to be the entire focus of this. I wear this pin, which is the United Nations Sustainability Goals, Sustainability Development Goals. There are 17 of them, but oddly enough, about 5 of them apply to this community and the sustainability coordinator, and that's affordable and clean energy, industry, innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, and life on land. Conservation is the low-hanging fruit to make some inroads as soon as possible on sustainability, not just energy conservation. Also, I would recommend that the committee, the Energy Committee, have its name changed to expand its name to be something like Sustainability and Energy Committee, and expand the number of members from 5 to 7. You currently have an organization chart that shows community services and the purview of the departments under this are Beach, Council on Aging, Human Services, Library, Recreation, Veterans. Those are the responsibility of the current Assistant Town Manager. There are attendant committees that go with almost each of those departments. Then under this same organization chart, you've got community development, for which we don't have a person at the Assistant Town Manager level who is taking care of community development. That is a position that's been requested many times through town meeting, not been funded. And so I would hope in the future that you move quickly in that direction. And so those departments are conservation, inspectional services, building and health, the Zoning Board of Appeals, planning with its subset of affordable housing. Those are the areas that the sustainability coordinator should be working with, those committees and departments. So that's just a recommendation from me. And hopefully, whatever the committee is called, whether it's energy and sustainability, that they don't meet at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning.
Thank you. One more? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Shad. I'm here on behalf of the petitioners for the article for the Sustainability Director, and also as a member of the Beach Committee. There's definitely a lot of good work that's been put into this job description, and there's going to be a lot of work that this person is going to have to do to get done. So I'd like to say that perhaps we need to start at a slightly higher level than a coordinator so that we can give it its maximum ability to be able to grow into the position and get as many things done as can be possibly done. The other is with regards to the beaches. Our beaches are our first line of defense, and there's not too much emphasis in this position on coastal resiliency. And I was wondering if the board had thoughts on, because when we first created the position, we gave emphasis to energy, but also emphasis to coastal resiliency. What are the plans for addressing coastal resiliency going forward? Because that's extremely important for us as a coastal community.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take one more comment. Dr. Ling?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have emailed a letter to the board earlier this afternoon regarding the Sustainability Coordinator job description and the title. And so I don't want to repeat all of that here. I didn't know that, the board will open up for comments. So thank you for the opportunity. I totally agree with what Ms. Judith Fenwick said, that, you know, this position should have very broad responsibilities and functions, including most of the functions that she has mentioned. And also, I want to echo what Lynn said before, you know, because in the original petition, we have included coastal resiliency functions and responsibility in the petition. And I want to say that, you know, the current job description is extremely broad and very, you know, and the role has responsibility for very complex issues and plans and projects. So I do think that this should be a higher level management position, and as Mr. Doug Brown has mentioned earlier. And I really think that, you know, the person you hire should be tasked with expanding the sustainability position into a group of how many direct reports as appropriate, because the functions and the responsibility are just very, very broad. And these issues are very complex, particularly the coastal resiliency area. And also in the current job position, this person has responsibility also for solid waste and recycling and all the, you know, a lot of other very, very critical functions for the town. So I encourage the select board and the acting town manager to consider upgrade this position, and whatever, you know, the title is would be also very important to attract qualified candidates and retain them, not just attract them, but retain them, because this is a really, really critical position for the town. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Any other comments on this, the Sustainability Coordinator job description? Mr. Brown?
I'll just comment that we did recognize that it's a huge task, and that's why we decided that it was not practical to expect this person to be doing all the sustainability as well as coastal resiliency. In our strategic planning session, we determined that we would fold the the sustainability person in first in the 2024 budget, and then work on the coastal resiliency position for the 2025 budget. So that's another reason why I think the coordinator is more appropriate, because we're going to have a coastal resiliency coordinator as well, and then we'll decide later if there's a hierarchy or if there's more staff that's needed. So that is something that we have considered.
So the question is, do we support the town manager's job description for the sustainability coordinator?
I just
Mr.
want to
Patterson?
add one more comment. Served on the liaison to the Conservation Commission for quite a few years, and the regulatory issues associated with, you know, beach nourishment and beach management are pretty dense and difficult. And so, you know, there are people, you know, the Conservation Department, you know, has been dealing with these things on an application by application basis throughout the town. And I don't think that's a burden that should be pushed onto this particular individual. I think that's a specialty that requires a lot of knowledge and experience in Massachusetts regulations and restrictions on what you can do with coastal issues and conservation issues. So I would support kind of keeping it out, because I think it is a discipline that's very difficult to deal with in and of itself. And I think, quite honestly, our conservation agent, I think, does a pretty good job. And it's a shifting one. The state doesn't have static regulations and laws, and they do get changed over time.
Are we voting, Mr. Johnson-Staub? Or do you want it by consensus?
It sounds like I have a consensus support for the existing title and scope. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I
Okay.
have.
We'll move on to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. Has everyone taken a look at that job description as well? Any comments?
Is Mr. Johnson Staub going to give us an intro?
Hang on, I see you. Give me 1 second. Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
So again, a new
Yes.
position was, this one is slightly different. This position is slightly different in that a new position was funded via a petition article at the June 2020 town meeting, which was originally planned for April of 2020. The Select Board later approved creation of this position after town meeting acted. The petition article proposed the position title of Affirmative Action Diversity Outreach Coordinator and called for the position to report to both the school superintendent and town manager. The job description was created through an extensive dialogue among town staff, school staff, and community advocates. The position was filled, but the individual holding the position resigned after a short period of time. The school department then created its own full-time position, and the Select Board identified it as a priority for the FY 2024 budget to create a full-time town position to increase the pay grade. I sought input from a number of individuals in revising the job description, including an HR consultant who is a woman of color, 2 community members who are women of color, and a member of the Affirmative Action Diversity Committee, as well as the primary sponsor of this job description. And based on that input, I crafted a job description, and I've mentioned before, and I'll say again, that I did reduce the scope of this job description to focus on the town organization, meaning not just employees, yes, all employees, but also boards and committees, so that this position could develop a strategic plan that informs policies of all boards and committees, as well as operations of the town departments, to align with diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. I reduced the scope. It does not include responsibility for adjudicating conflict of diversity and equity issues in the community. I fear that that would be an overwhelming scope of responsibilities that might detract qualified applicants and set the incumbent up for failure. So that's the reason that I narrowed the scope for this position.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from the board? Mr. Brown?
I certainly understand the comments made by residents that it seemed unfortunate that we're excluding residents and they have no place to turn. I know you mentioned there are some outlets for residents to turn to, and I don't have them memorized, but do you think there's any possibility that we could make some kind of a mention of public can reach to this person to be referred to those other resources without putting a big workload on them? And that would kind of alleviate that concern, because a lot of people don't know where to turn, and maybe they will turn to this person and say, I don't know what to do, and they could say, well, you can turn to this person and that person. I can't make a big project out of it because I got a lot of stuff to do for town, but I can refer you to people.
That's a thoughtful suggestion.
What are the resources that we're referring to?
The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the County Human Rights Commission. Those are the two that come to my mind. And the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination.
Okay, my concern with the part of the original wording was that if a community member does come to this person.
Please speak up. That fan is so loud.
One of my concerns with this position, is that better? Yes. Okay, thanks. With this person being a resource for the community, was that this person did not have any legal authority or any way to implement anything. The unfortunate example that was brought up at our last meeting, I wasn't sure what somebody was supposed to do in that situation, regardless if they were a town employee or not. So I'm not quite sure I understand what this person's role would be, other than to be when I looked over the original in Article 31, I think it was, that was clearly an outreach person. That was clearly a community organizer person, and that had a different scope than what I think this one does now.
There's a delay on it.
That's all I have to say right now.
Okay. Any other comments about the job description? Ms. Cow?
Okay, I talk softly, so I'll try to talk into the mic. Good evening. Thank you so much for putting this on an agenda because, as you have said, Madam Chair, so many people have come before the committee talking.
Talk closer to the mic, Dale, just
That's
so
for
we
the
can hear you.
Yell at it.
I know. Well, I've had a tube down my throat, so it's hard to talk. So anyway, not have.
Can we shut that off?
Okay.
Because I can't hear. We're going to shut the fans off because
I appreciate that. Thank you. Wow. Thank you.
Get hot. Go ahead.
Darn things.
Okay, I was going to go into this, but I will just have an aside because I'm not sure how much time I actually have. But I somewhat disagree, Mr. Johnson-Staub, with your characterization of having input. I believe, the person that you hired as a consultant from outside only does it for organizations. So if you ask somebody to come in and do a document for an organization, then that's what you get, versus one for a community. So I have, just comment on that, and also the interaction with at least me, the affirmative action team. I wouldn't characterize that as any kind of interaction. First, before discussing the function that has changed significantly for this position, I want to commend the board and express my absolute appreciation for the improvement to the document that was made. The requirement for a town DEI vision and a DEI strategic plan provides the DEI officer with an essential framework for achieving sustainable change. It can create a culture across Falmouth that is welcoming and advantageous to all community members. So thank you very much for doing that. I'm here to talk about, to ask the Select Board to reinstate the DEI officer function that was detailed in the original job description. As an aside, I'll say that I disagree with Mr. Johnson-Staub. That position was for the community and the schools. The town was not a factor in that particular description. It was for the community and the schools. Here we go. Oops. As you know, the DEI position was approved by town meeting in April of 2020. Then, through efforts of a diverse town team of community members, a job description was developed. The benefit of a process that used that team approach, followed by an enterprise publication seeking public comment, resulted in approval of our first job description. The community has raised its voice with insightful contributions. They offered support for a DEI representative who would be responsive to and engage with all Falmouth residents. The position was divided between the schools and the community, right here. Now the schools have their own dedicated DEI director, so the community should have had its DEI officer remaining. We continue to witness the desire of the community's engagement at a 2020 Zoom meeting at which the previous DEI introduced herself to and fielded questions from the community. It was evident from those interactions that residents were thankful for the expected access to a DEI officer. The community desires a DEI who not only listens but actually functions to help address voiced concerns, including about increased occurrences of hate in the community. However, an unexpected and significant change in focus has been made. The first job description detailed resident interactions with the DEI. One of the office's essential responsibilities was to function as an advocate for the residential community. The officer was to also serve as a liaison with various civic and faith organizations and multimedia outlets, all of which are invested in addressing more accepting and beneficial behaviors toward, for example, ethnic, racial, religious, gender-based ability-based, age-based, and veteran-impacted groups. The new March 2023 version of the job description removes the DEI's responsive interaction with residents and impacted groups. It substitutes interactions that focus solely on town personnel, that being the town manager, the personnel of town departments and boards. Now, due to that change in focus, the community as a whole does not have direct access to the DEIO. While Community Voices helped script the first job description, the new version had no resident team review or input. The first version of the description was published for public comment. No such feedback opportunity for community opinion was provided when preparing the new version. As a result, unlike that for the original version, there was no transparency, no community engagement, or communication provided to the majority of Falmouth residents for the significant change that is the focus of the March 23 DEI job description. Town meeting members did receive an after-the-fact notification about the new version of the job description. It was mentioned in the explanation portion of town meeting articles 1 and 23. In preparation for the April 10th town meeting, members were advised that a copy of the new version would be posted on the town meeting page in advance of precinct meetings held March 28th through April 6th. Otherwise, the entirety of the notification to the other town residents for the significant change to the DEI function consisted of an Enterprise mini-printed warrant showing Article 1 at the very end, watching the few Select Board public comment sections, and tonight's discussion. It just seems the community as a whole has yet to be adequately notified of this significant change. In the March 17th edition of the Enterprise, page 14, there was a discussion on South Coast Winds project. The Select Board was quoted as saying that their decision to deny the project was based upon the lack of transparency, community engagement, and communication. We respectfully ask that the Select Board to reconsider accepting this significant change and to apply those same transparency, community engagement, and communication features to produce another version before implementing the March 6th change that shuts the community out of the process and results in a DEI officer who only interacts with town employees. We respectfully ask the Select Board to acknowledge the voice of the community, Falmouth community residents that sought the benefits of direct access to the DEI officer. And we respectfully ask the Select Board to restore the interaction between Falmouth residents and the DEI officer, which was in the first job description, and that was developed with a community approach. So I thank you for taking the time for me to be able to detail these concerns.
Thank you. Dr. Freeman Silva?
Pizza delivered?
I know, that's what it looked like.
I'm Sandra Freeman Silva, Precinct 2, and I am the maker of the town meeting article in June of 2020, where this proposal was submitted, and we gained a very strong majority vote to pass the article to create the DEI officer. We had our meeting at Falmouth High School field during COVID, and I'm very disappointed at what is going on this evening. In my opinion, even your description of the functions of our town government don't tally. I communicated with the town moderator, Vieira, and he told me that it was the work of the Select Board along with the town manager who would produce a job description. And yet you have inferred from your earlier conversation that you have turned over this responsibility exclusively to the town manager. And I don't believe that's appropriate. We elected you to do the work on behalf of we the public. We have more than 30,000 people in the town of Falmouth. Town Hall has about 350 employees. So the idea is to hire a DEI person whose exclusive job is going to be to serve Town Hall and not the community as a whole, which I think is, again, you have totally lost the vision and the content of the job description that was passed at town meeting by more than 250 elected members of our community. I just want to point out that I did send you a copy, an edited version of this, where I made proposals on how you could incorporate our vision that was passed at town meeting in 2020 to make it more reflective of what we want and wanted then and continue to want. Let me just mention the first sentence of the proposal written by our town manager. And I quote, "The diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI officer will lead the town's efforts to ensure that we are centering a commitment to be an anti-racist organization." The town may be an organization, but when you're talking about an organization, you're talking about a formal structure that is not really akin to a town. Towns do have formal organizing structures, but I would call it a community. So I crossed out organization and asked that you use the word community, because the DEI officer is going to serve the community. Then the sentence goes on to say, to practice diversity, equity, and inclusion in our decision-making, and then I asked you to add, and community engagement, and to ensure we are achieving it in our outcomes. So I'm trying to ask you to put community engagement back into this job description. This person is going to be bored to death doing what you're asking that person to do if the person really has a commitment to DEI. Then I asked you to quote from the original description of the article from 2020, the next sentence. The DEI officer will provide townwide direction, support, and communication in the areas of diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and related compliance matters. Again, I'm just asking you to put some life into this job description so that we can hire somebody who is truly committed, not just to implementing the laws, DEI compliance. That is part of the job that is being handled by the Human Resources Director currently, and that person could continue. So this person could pay attention to the needs of our community.
You're not going to go through every sentence of the job description, are you? Okay,
No.
because I'm going to time you out.
I'm asking you to just, again, pay attention to what was passed at town meeting and find some way to incorporate the vision and the actions that we expected this individual to be responsible for. And I think that you know what that would look like. I gave you opportunities. I did some of the work for you, and I wish that you had consulted me when you had the opinions of this outside consultant who never spoke with me, or other people that helped with creating the original job description. So I ask you to reconsider your, soon-to-be-made decision and really take into consideration what would be helpful for the needs of our community. We're living in an age where anti-Semitic acts have increased tremendously in our country and in our community, where there is a lot of militancy against tolerance and understanding and respect for others, unlike ourselves, and I think that we need to be investing in the right person. Thank you very much.
Comments from the board?
I'd just like to hear from Mr. Johnson-Staub what you see. I know you mentioned it would be overwhelming, but what do you see as any opportunity to include that language of substituting community for organization, and what that might entail for this position.
So, first let me say that I acknowledge that I should have done a better job with engaging with the folks that crafted this job description to begin with. I did sit down and meet with Sandy, and we talked about the job description. That was part of my process in developing the job description I brought forward. We didn't come to the same conclusions. We didn't agree on the job description, but I did sit down with Sandy, and Sienna Mawusi was at that meeting, you'll recall. I would also just...
She's pointing. I thought she was pointing.
You don't recall sitting in my office with Sienna Mawusi and reviewing the job description? I just wanted to mention in passing that the human resources consultant who worked with me in drafting this job description is a former human resources director for the town of Needham, so she does have a background in municipal DEI work. But in terms of the scope of the position, I guess I would say two things. It's absolutely true. There's a pretty significant difference between the job description that is envisioned by the individuals who spoke today and the original job description and what I have brought forward. I would be more than happy to, and I think it would be natural with a new job description, a new position, to sit down with the incumbent after a year or so and revisit that job description and get that person's input on how we might want to rework the job description. And if at that time that person feels like it's realistic to expand it, that's certainly something I would be open to. And lastly, if the board feels that that they want to go back to the original and really have this person doing adjudication of conflict in the broader community, if that's what the community desires, I'm happy to oblige. My personal professional take was that I'm concerned about attracting qualified candidates, and I'm concerned that that task is so overwhelming that it would be difficult to succeed. But happy to, if the board wants to expand the scope, I'm happy to oblige.
I have a question.
Mr. Zelinski?
Have you identified a group that do this that wouldn't be overwhelmed in larger communities? Are other communities doing this successfully? Are they finding people to do this?
There are other communities that are doing this. I know the consultant who I mentioned referred to the town of Lexington, which had a bad experience with a broader job description and was narrowing the job description after having a position that was more broadly focused. So, it's a new industry. There are towns doing it. I think there are a lot of struggles in doing the work that all of these towns are having.
Ms. Price?
So I think the fundamental issue here is that we have two, as we said, different visions of what this job is going to be. The original vision was community organizer, community activist, and the job description that we have before us is someone who does structural, strategic work. And I think those things are very different. And so I think that's where there is this butting of heads of this idea of this job. I think this job description, it doesn't say that someone's going to work with the community, but I think it's impossible for somebody to come in and do DEI work in the town and not engage with the community that it's working in. My idea of this position is someone is going to come in and tell us as a select board and work with the town manager to strategically and systemically change the way that we do things and our hiring practices and the way that people do reporting of incidents, in the way that we retain folks, the way that we just all of the things that we do structurally that could be inequitable or exclusive, or not being welcoming.
Supportive.
Not being supportive, exactly. And I think in order to do that, it's similar to the work that Henry St. Julian is doing. He works for the schools, and he does what he does to focus on the students, but he engages with the community and with community groups and gets feedback from them, and he supports the work that community groups are doing by telling students and faculty and teachers about that. And I would imagine that this person would do the same thing. They wouldn't start from scratch. They would go into the community and they would say, Racial Justice Falmouth is already hosting this thing, and maybe I should get in on that and learn about what they're doing, learn about the community, and bring that back to the town, and vice versa. I don't think it's reasonable to ask somebody to do all of the structural work, strategic planning with the select board, and then also do community organizing. I think those are two different jobs. And so I think this job is really important. A lot of businesses and organizations are having DEI officers to look at their structures and look at their systems. And perhaps we do need a community organizer position, but I think those are both very different. And I think trying to combine them into one is not going to be successful.
I'd like to see some language that incorporates the option for flexibility so that the person, if they can do it, can reach out to the community a little bit. I wouldn't want the language to be prohibitive from the person from engaging the community. At the same time, I don't want to mandate that they have to spend hours every day with every phone call. So it's a tricky thing to do, but if there's some way we can adjust the language a little bit to allow the person to have flexibility to do a little more community outreach, because I think that's something, we don't want it to be a barrier, as Anjali said.
I agree with Ms. Scott Price's assessment. I also believe that you can't separate the community out. It's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
I also see that you can write goals for this position that is expected, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that when the town manager is evaluating the person, and if they set it up, that one of their goals would be to come up with resources for people in the community. I do agree that it's an important piece, and I also agree that I don't want to overwhelm the person either.
Well, number 10 says represents the town at board and community meetings associated with diversity, attends public meetings sponsored by federal, state, and town agencies. So that right there tells me that this person is encouraged to go to these events. But what this person is not being asked to do is to organize events or to handle grievances that people bring. Because again, I think if we want a person to be the person that people in the town go to, we need to set up systems to make them successful so that they're not just someone came to me with a complaint or a concern by a private citizen on private property, and now I've got to go do the research on what can actually be done about that. And that's my concern, because I've had things happen to me in the community and I wouldn't know where to go, but I also would expect that if I'm going to go to someone, they are going to know. If there is somebody that I am designated or told I need to go to for something, that they are going to know how to help me. And so unless we have those structures in place, I don't think this person would be successful in that particular piece.
But you do agree that the community, Anjali, is just as important in this, because the community is the workforce.
Absolutely. Well, then that's part of the whole.
And we don't want them to be excluded by what time of day it is.
Absolutely.
I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, that's why I think maybe we need another job, but we need to set that job up to be successful, just as I think we're setting this one up to be successful.
I think if we leave the picture too broad, then ambiguity sets in and things get lost. So they've got to be clearly defined, so everybody's...
There is some opportunity in item 1, leads development of vision and strategic plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion for select board consideration and adoption, which could right then say, we need some more help to deal with community issues and maybe some more human services support, or, I mean, it is there. I think just a couple of tweaks, like instead of saying it's for the organization, I think that Ms. Silva's point about the saying community there rather than organization, I don't think that hurts us. I think a couple of key changes to the language could be more inviting to the community to know that, as I said, maybe they can't spend all day with a particular case, but they can be a resource to reach out to, and they can help them find somebody that can help them who's more appropriate, or maybe we can identify that we got a bigger problem on our hands because they're going to at least get that feedback from the public. I'm not sure where you draw the line there, but I would like to be a little more inclusive of the community.
So, I think one area that's been touched on that I think can be emphasized more is that this person can do community engagement in connection with building an anti-racist organization, right? So it is not in isolation. The organization work, and it's not just, yes, hiring and retention are a really important part of it, but it's also policies and procedures. It's also, how do we do community engagement? Just when the select board does community engagement or the planning board does community engagement, there may be DEI issues that relate to how we do community engagement. So I think I can put a little bit more emphasis on community engagement work in this job description, but I do think the big dividing point, and Ms. Scott Price was alluding to it, is adjudicating private conflict. I think that's, to me, the tipping point where the job description becomes overwhelming. And there are other institutions that are there to do that work. So again, if the will of the board is that you want a position that's being requested by these individuals tonight that's directly accessible to address conflict out in the community, I can certainly do that. But that's where my personal concern is, where the job gets overwhelming, is adjudicating private conflict. Community engagement, awareness raising, sure. But there's, someone walks into a CVS and is mistreated, is the municipal DEI officer going to address that?
That's where the referral to the appropriate agency might be the limit of what they can do, but we don't know that. Maybe that person's, like Ms. Silva said, maybe they're going to be sitting around the board and looking for something to do.
If they're sitting around board, we shouldn't hire them.
May I ask you a question?
Thank you. Bingo.
How is it, sometimes I feel like we use consultants far too much. Sometimes it's appropriate. I don't know why we don't spend some more time with workshops or making community involvement part of the process of developing it, more than just the 3 people that come up, 2 of which are Caucasian. I think that if we made an earnest effort in grabbing that demographic and bringing them in and listening to them, it may help somebody understand. I mean, we only have 2.3% of our population in Falmouth is African American, and that's what the latest okay? We're sitting around here, we can't even figure out how to help 2.3% of this population. I think we should ask them. I think we should hold this and at least offer them the opportunity to come in and us to listen. We've done it for everything else. I don't know why this has to be decided tonight with people in 50-50 or 60-40 disagreement. It's not even about us. It's about what we need to do for those people. And you may disagree with me, that's how I feel about it. Our community is our community, and without their input, total input, how can you make a decision for them? And maybe you can answer their questions and relate to them what's problematic about that with legal stuff. But we need to be talking to them, in my opinion.
I like the suggestion that Mr. Johnson-Staub said about adding in some language about engaging with the community as it relates to the work in general. I think that's a good thing that we can add.
And revisiting the job description with the incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that person helps us rework the job description a year down the road.
I think we all recognize that human dynamics are extremely complicated. And it's not just a 2.3% of the population problem. It's the whole community, right? And so I think, at least in a sort of in inviting the person in this position to address larger community problems and the interactions within the community is appropriate. But it's not easy. I mean, I don't think.
Did I say it was easy?
No, I didn't. I'm not.
Oh, I thought you said it's not easy.
No, I did say it's not easy, but I wasn't pointing to anything you said.
All right.
I'm just saying that, it's a challenging job, and it's something they can grow into. And there's nothing wrong with making an aspiration. But I understand what Peter Johnson-Staub is trying to do, too, is just to make it a job description that's attainable by a normal individual. And then if they can grow beyond that and provide additional resources and help to the community, so be. Okay, it's a tough one.
Mr. Brown?
No, I don't know. Are you suggesting, Mrs. Zelinski, that we should have like public forum, or how would you go about?
I think that we should give, with something of this importance, I think that we should be able to explain to them the limitations that may exist, and they need to understand that. There's a reason why this room is filled with almost all white people, because they don't feel like they belong here. And I think we've done public forums for everyone else. I think that they should be invited to at least identify the process of it, or at least get their input.
I'm going to disagree strongly that we have a public input over a job description. I think we can limit the input. We can, if the board decides to go back, we've had people who've done a lot of work on this already. I just have a concern about that.
I think we have a lot of feedback. I think we just have to decide how far we think this person can be stretched when it's a one-person operation. We saw the first person gave it a try and I think was maybe a little overwhelmed. I'm not sure what all the details were of why
Is that part of an exit interview? Did we get an exit interview from that? Because I've never seen one. I don't even know why she left, or they left.
I don't know exactly either.
Exactly.
But we've got the schools taking half the work now, and now we're taking the other half, so we're hoping that that workload is more reasonable. So
we need to, I'm going to take one more comment. Did I see your hand? Come on up.
I just wanted to sort of bring these two parts together. When we think about community engagement, we have to think about the Chamber of Commerce. We have to think about businesses in town. We have to think about venues where we have documented evidence of problems. And what role does the town government play in raising people's consciousness and educating people in the business community? For example, in housing, if there are episodes of discrimination, racial profiling in a store, or racial profiling in housing, access to apartments or accommodations, or other conflicts, then yes, it is appropriate for the town of Falmouth to host workshops that could be performed by this individual. This individual probably would be an expert in such things. And we have to be dealing with these things. We can't be waiting another year or two or 5 or 10 so you can hire another person, write a strategic plan, and decide. We've had plenty of evidence about some of the problems that people face in our community. And we now have an opportunity to hire somebody who should have the skills. The previous individual that was hired was responsible for both schools and the town of Falmouth. That was a big job, and there were problems with that hire. But, maybe it was the problem of the hiring committee and not necessarily the job description. So we really have to be, I think, a little more, in a little more finessed way about what we want and how we're going to get there.
Thank you.
And I do hope that we will.
Ms. Scott Price?
Yeah, I think Sandy brings up a good point, is that if this person is going to be doing trainings and workshops and things like that for the town, that is something that this person could open up to the larger community, and this person could do these things for the chamber and for small businesses or whatnot. And so I agree. I think that'd be a really good idea, is that the person's already doing them. If they have access to the town and they have access to town resources and town policies and procedures, and they can make recommendations and they can make workshops and those kinds of things, and then host it again at the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, or host it again at the Woods Hole Business Association or something like that. I think that's an excellent idea. I think that would be a goal of this job. I don't necessarily think it goes in the job description, because if they're doing a workshop and then we tell them you're also going to do this workshop a second time, instead of doing it at Town Hall, you're going to do it across the street at the Chamber of Commerce. I think that is something that we should definitely make a goal of theirs. But I just don't think that specific language goes in the job description, but I think that should be a goal.
When would they find out that goal? after they get the job, or would there be goals that were initiated as part of it? So, I mean, you almost can't have one without the other.
Well, I think if, during the interview, you could say these, here's a job description, do you meet the qualifications of this job? And the qualifications are, and here's some of the, some of the functions of this job. And then during a job interview, what would my day look like? Your day would look like reviewing these policies, coming up with a workshop, and then the next day you would be hosting this workshop at Town Hall, and the next day you'd be hosting it at Chamber of Commerce or something.
I understand.
Can I suggest something? I'm listening to this discussion, but it seems to me the question we're really asking is, how can we affect change, right? How can we make a change in this community? And if you start from there and say, what kind of roles can a person like this play that can cause, constructive change in the form of increased DEI? That might help us, craft a job description or 2 job descriptions as the case may be. But I think until we can actually start talking about where the change needs to occur, we can't really talk about who can get in there and make a difference.
And one of the core responsibilities of this, that's in this job description, is to work with the organization and do community engagement on developing a strategic plan for DEI. But I certainly think that community education can even be added potentially as to the job description. Again, but I do think there's a distinction between community engagement and training, community education, and adjudicating private conflict.
You really,
Okay, I think we've taken enough public comment at this point. I hear what you're saying, that you didn't ask for that, but there was
There was somebody at the
There
last
was
select board
somebody who
meeting who
came up
specifically used
and
an
gave an
example.
example of what somebody should, a conflict that they should get involved in. And I agree that it was completely out of line.
But I think what Peter has just suggested is a good idea and moving in the right direction.
I would agree.
I would suggest if you can make a couple more changes to incorporate the word community and make it a little bit more community-oriented, maybe put it on the website for public consideration and comment, just another month or something. I don't know, I don't want to wait too long, because this job's been unfilled for a while, and it's also timely.
But we also need to have this done in time for town meeting, which is next Monday.
Right. So that's a practical challenge. There is some latitude to modify job descriptions that have been rated and classified and approved by town meeting. We have a rubric that we use. We take a job description, we use the rubric to score the position to determine what the pay grade is. And we do update job descriptions, and then we go through the rubric, and if the classification doesn't change, we don't have to bring it back to town meeting. So there is some flexibility after town meeting to amend the job description. And we could, by the same token, we could make some refinement to the job description now and post it on the website. But I guess the fundamental question is, do we want to have a public engagement process and, call a timeout on the whole thing and not classify the position? We do need to know what the job description is in order to have town meeting assign a pay grade to it.
Right, of course it is timely. Why don't we,
Is it possible to, I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say, why don't we just make those couple of changes and include community in a couple locations, if we are in agreement that that's something that we want to do, and then go forward, and like you said, you can make minor changes later.
Maybe I can help with that, because according to moderator David Vieira for the town meeting, the job description is not addressed at all at town meeting. It's just part of the explanations. The only thing that one can talk about at the town meeting is the grade and the salary. So the job description doesn't have to rush to be done for the town meeting, just in case you were thinking that.
But doesn't the job description trigger the classification?
Right.
And
So
money? That's my only.
Yeah, he said we can't do it.
It is absolutely correct. The town meeting doesn't directly vote the job description, but the job description does determine what the pay grade is that we propose to town meeting. So again, there is some latitude to modify the job description before and after town meeting. But if the change, changes the rating of the position, then potentially you're back to town meeting.
Right. Because then we can't change the classification, I don't believe, after town meeting. You'd have some play with the
Correct.
job description.
Right.
As long as you don't put so many things in there that you change the classification, and the person should get more money.
Exactly.
Because then you're in trouble.
So with the suggestions that we've been discussing about adding in the word community and adding in the language about educating the community, do you think those are enough that they're gonna change the classification?
I don't.
Okay.
And I guess my only question would be, is it preferable for me to quickly make some changes and put it up on the website? Or is it preferable to say that we're going to have a little bit more time on that and some public input on it, and we'll do it after town meeting?
I would suggest you make whatever changes you think you're getting from the feedback at this meeting, put it on the website right away so the town meeting members can see the intent of what we've talked about. And then I'm sure we'll talk about it again at town meeting, and maybe there'll be some more comments, and maybe there'll be another adjustment.
But we can't talk about the job description on town meeting floor.
Oh, okay.
We cannot.
Okay.
I asked David Vieira that.
I
That
see.
is
Beyond the scope.
outside the
Okay.
scope of town meeting. You can only talk about the classification. So you could relook at the job description after town meeting, as long as you don't broaden the scope
Yeah.
so much that it changes the classification.
Okay.
Do that.
But I think the first part of Mr. Brown's suggestion is a good one, to add in.
I agree.
What the feedback that you think we're getting, and then go from there.
I would
agree.
support that.
I would support
As
that
a
as well.
second on a motion, is that a motion?
If needed, sure.
That's guidance,
Or I think for everything else, we've just been general guidance, general,
consensus.
I think you understand what we're saying.
Thank you. Yep, that's helpful.
Okay.
Okay. Approve request from the Arts Falmouth, Inc. for a waiver reduction of the special event permit for the fee for the Arts Alive Festival on the Library Lawn, Peg Noonan Park, and Shore Street Extension on Friday, 6/16, Saturday, 6/17, Sunday, 6/18. Mr. Johnson's job?
Arts Alive seeks a full waiver of the special event fee for this two-day event. The applicant has submitted financial documentation showing that all proceeds will be used to offset the cost of the event. The board waived the fee last year and approved a reduced fee in the years before 2022.
I'd just like, if I could comment, I think we're seeing more and more requests for waivers, and it's getting almost to the point where everybody wants a waiver for everything. And I'm not picking on this particular applicant. I'm just seeing a trend here. And at some point, we can't just waive every fee for everything. We might need to think about that again, and,
So where are you drawing the line?
well,
Yeah, I think that's the question.
it's just something I think we need to be aware of and start to think about. I'm not really ready to make a line right tonight, but
Okay.
just a trend that I'm noticing. And maybe it's not sustainable to continue to waive every fee.
Well, I think we only see fee waiver requests, so is it possible to get some data on how many fee waiver requests we're getting in comparison to how many fee requests are going out? Or how many applications are coming in general for permits? So we can compare and see, if it is a large percentage, or if it seems like a lot because we only see a handful of them.
I guess we should also kind of consider who's a nonprofit and what events are for
I think that's the issue.
for-profit.
That's I would agree with that.
I think that's the issue. And these are, all this influx of additional fee requests are all from not-for-profits.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I think comparing that to how
And
many
they're
we
part of the
get
community.
in
So-
general
sorry.
would be good data.
Absolutely. Do I have any,
I would move approval.
Second.
okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion amongst the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
We approved your request.
The waiver. The application for the waiver. Good question.
You're in.
Approve request for John Wesley United Methodist Church for a waiver reduction of special event permit fee for Sunday worship services at Surf Drive Beach from 7/2/23 to 9/3/23.
The church seeks a reduced fee for recurring use of Surf Drive Beach for worship services. In prior years, the board approved a waiver of the fee for all but the first and last of the one-day events held during the season. So that's a provision in the waiver policy that for some of these recurring events, you charge for the first and last event, but not the ones in between.
I think this is,
Move that.
I think this is a relatively low-impact event, and I think it serves a great purpose, so
Yep.
I would be in favor of approving this. Is that, can I make that a motion? I move that we approve the recommended fee waiver.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more conversation amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Request for variance to sign code, special events, John Wesley United Methodist Church, 270 Gifford Street.
The church seeks a variance for an on-premises sign that exceeds the duration allowed by right. This request has been approved in the past.
I think this is a great community event, and I think it deserves the advertising. I've never found it objectionable, and it's only for part of the year.
Is that a motion, Mr.?
Yes, that's a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approve request from Falmouth Arts Market and the Falmouth Cultural Council for a waiver reduction of the special events permit fee for the Falmouth Art Market at Marina Park on Tuesdays from 6/27/23 to 8/9/23. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
The Falmouth Art Market and Cultural Council seek a full waiver of the fee for this recurring event, and they have received it in the past.
I don't know, I feel the same way. I think this is just part and parcel of the culture of the town. Something that's important to kind of support the local arts community. So I would move that we approve it.
Second.
And Marilyn already left, so we have to approve it.
There she is.
Alice is still here.
Oh, she's still here, okay.
Alice. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the request from the Falmouth Art Market and the Falmouth Cultural Council for a fee waiver reduction. Motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye. Welcome, thank you.
Okay, approve request from Donna Hammers for a waiver reduction of the special event permit fee for the Earth Day concert at the Band Shell Marina Park on Saturday, 4/22/23.
Hi, this is the flyer of the event. You can pass it down. First, I want to say I'm Donna Hammers, Music for the Heart and Soul. I'm an independent artist. I'm not a official nonprofit, but I, believe me, don't make any money at this. But I'm just trying to create a wonderful event for Falmouth to bring music to the earth and to the land and to the community, to bring diversity and sustainability. I invited people from the recycling department, people from Hui to come. They declined, but I've been reaching out to try to create a great event. I'll be doing music and drumming and dancing, all songs about the elements, earth, air, fire, and water. I'm inviting children to come and sing. Everyone there will be invited to dance and sing. So I really appreciate, I got a small grant from the Arts Falmouth, but it's only a drop in the bucket. My expenses are already up to between $1,800 and $2,000, and I only got $700. So I'm hoping to raise money with sponsorship and selling earth flags, but really a lot of this is going to come out of my own pocket. And I would really appreciate the waiver. I have to pay for insurance, which is $200, and if it rains, we're going to have it at the Congregational Church, and that's going to cost me $400. So it would really help, and I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Ms. Hammers.
All the work that you're doing and bringing more music into Falmouth and with more entertainment licenses. I really appreciate that. We need more music.
Okay.
I have a question. It says $50 permit fee, but the request is for a full waiver?
I think the request was for a partial or full waiver. I think your preference
Oh,
would be
the full
for...
waiver of the $200 fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd move approval of that for a new event.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the waiver reduction of the special event permit for Donna Hammers.
And the Struggling artist discount.
Any further comment or conversation amongst the board?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Request for a variant sign code, off-premise signs, Buzzards Bay Coalition, Buzzards Bay Watershed Ride on Saturday, 10/1/23. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
The applicant seeks a variance for off-premises signs to promote its annual watershed ride. The board has approved this variance in the past.
I move approval. Oh, we should, I guess discussion first, I'm
Any
sorry.
discussion?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Can we make this contingent on their support for an outfall pipe?
I don't think that's been settled, has
They've
it?
already offered that.
I
Okay,
move approval.
we have a motion.
A second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to vote to appoint the town manager.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to bring the Board of Selectmen back from their recess, please.
Giddy up.
And we will begin with, folks, we need to get started. We're going to have a conversation to appoint the town manager. And I'm going to start with some remarks. Tonight it marks the end of a long, thoughtful, and comprehensive effort to recruit Falmouth's next town manager. On behalf of the Select Board, I would like to thank the screening committee and our consultant for their hard work, diligence, thoughtful consideration, and scrutiny. They have forwarded to us 3 very accomplished and qualified candidates, all of whom they believe possess the professional qualifications and personal attributes to be successful as Falmouth's next town manager. 37 applicants were received from candidates interested in this position, and the screening committee interviewed 10 of those 37 candidates. 2 of the 10 interviewed were black males, and 1 was a female. Because we had an internal candidate, there was reduced interest in the part of several potential applicants. This was especially so with female candidates. The consultant personally contacted 39 women managers, assistants, and municipal professionals. And that's down from 50. He had told me 50 originally. So I just want to make sure that is noted. The process. The board agreed that the process went well. They were happy with the process, and no one chose to bring another candidate forward. The screening committee presented their final report and recommendations to the Select Board on March 13th. One-on-one Select Board interviews with the candidate were held on Sunday, March 26th, and later a meet and greet event was held for the community. We have received written feedback from this event and have received emails reflecting a variety of community opinions. On Monday, March 27th, the Select Board interviewed the 3 finalists in a public session. This has been a deliberate, inclusive, and thoughtful process, and we have been presented 3 very capable professionals to be considered tonight for appointment. All candidates were screened to ensure they are a seasoned municipal administrator with a track record for success, a team builder, collaborator, capable of engaging the board, staff, and community in the work of the town, a person with demonstrated success in public sector budgeting and financial forecasting, an effective communicator, a leader in building a strong team of department heads, a person with a reputation for integrity and truthfulness, a professional not constrained by the 4 walls of the office and its responsibility, but instead is accessible, approachable, clear with their expectations, and unafraid to assist Falmouth in addressing its most important challenges. A continuous learner, open to feedback, a bottom-up leader capable of mining the incredible talent of the staff and of this Falmouth community, a leader committed to seeking to understand before taking action, a leader who is clear with his or her expectations dealing with employees, is invested in coaching, progressive improvement, and professional development, and finally, a leader who consistently looks for ways to help the board, the staff, and the community achieve their goals. This is a Select Board's appointment, and as such, all discussion tonight will be between the board members until such time that everyone has been heard. At the end of the discussion, I will be asking board members to identify their first and runner-up candidates. So we are open to discussion.
Madam Chair, I know I passed this report on my assigned research, which is, I guess, organizational effectiveness.
Yes.
And so I just summarized it into a 1-pager, and I'll just pass it out. And, I have findings, but the findings are just, the evidence that you would use in assessing that in the candidates. And that was my intent.
And I have received the assignment from most board members.
So this was a summary of what I did. You can read through it if you like. I could just read off the findings, but I'll defer to whatever you would like. I might say, I brought in these are the textbooks that I used when I was doing my coursework in organization management. And I would like to say that there is certainly a big difference between talking the talk and walking the walk in terms of actually putting it into practice, if you will. And one of the candidates, I thought, basically was writing a Cliff Notes for Peter Drucker's book on management, which Peter Drucker is kind of like the father of modern management, and, started the whole idea of management by objectives and that sort of thing, which has turned out to be a valuable tool for how you run an organization, and how you get buy-in from your constituents to understand what the organization needs from them and help them actually identify, what kinds of initiatives they can take independent of somebody telling them what to do. So, I'm prepared to tell you who I would have, who I think probably really handles the kinds of things that you just listed.
Ms. Scott Price
but-
had her hand up, so before
Oh, yeah,
we
yeah,
do
yeah,
that,
go for it.
we-
So-
we need to hear some other comments.
Sure.
Yeah, so since I'd like to just give some background on the way that I had prepared for the interviews and this process in general. So I went back through all of the emails and all of the communication that we got at the Lawrence School to piece together the general themes that people wanted to have in their next town manager. And some of the questions that I came up with, I saved for the public interview and some for the private. So I just would like to put it out there what I asked in the private interview. So for each person, I asked them one or two specific questions based on their CV or their work history. So for example, with Matt Wojcik in Douglas, I asked about his law background and such, so specific questions. I asked all of the candidates, how have you demonstrated a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I was very purposeful in using the word demonstrated because I wanted to hear what they have done and not what their ideas were. I asked them to describe how they worked with volunteers and committees in their previous roles because that is obviously a huge part of our community. I asked how they envision the select board supporting them in this role. I mentioned it earlier, I think the board has a tendency to overstep in general, and this I'm saying we collectively, I'm not putting this on any other person, including myself in that. And so I wanted to know in what ways they thought they would want to see the board support them in their role. When I asked, when you make difficult decisions, what are a few core values that you reflect on? And then I asked them to describe an example of how they would build trust and camaraderie within town. And lastly, I asked the two outside candidates if they've watched any of our select board meetings and if they had, what their observations were. And then for Peter, I asked if he went back and watched any of the board meetings and what feedback he had for himself. So those are the things that I asked about, that I considered, that I thought were relevant to the things that we heard from the community beyond just the qualifications of the candidate. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, I did some of the same things with our one-on-one interviews. I was very frank with them about basic function of the town. And I tried to lead them into telling me more about what they already knew about our town or how they interacted with the community. And it was very enlightening. They're all very polished. But it's the things they don't say that makes the most, to me, that makes the most difference to me. I followed up on the assignment they were given. I was given public safety. And while they all got good reports and good recommendations, there are different levels of good, in my opinion. And if anybody spent any time down south, Southern people are very proper. So when I called down to Georgia, if they like somebody and they respect somebody, they'll talk for an hour about them. If they don't like them, they'll be very respectful and it'll be a 5-minute conversation. I had more interaction with the people from down south because they were more willing to talk. The Douglas fire chief and police chief had nothing but glowing things to say about Mr. Wojcik. I reached out to the police chief in Yarmouth, He got back to me the next day. We had a very nice conversation. He had every confidence in Mr. Johnson Staub. Because of some things that are going in departmentally, I didn't reach out to Falmouth Police Department because I didn't want to get in the weeds there with some things that may or may not be going on with the chief search and all of that. I didn't want to complicate that. And we all know how effective Mr. Staub's been with the fire department staffing. So I figured he had a 6-year, but what I did notice, and I won't say who they're from, one of them was, some of the phrases that stuck out to me were valued his loyalty to his employees and his community. Excellent while working through challenges. Loved and benefited from the leadership program that was developed for them. Now, I had a Department of Public Service official with, I think he said 15 years. Reevaluate the way he did things after 15 years because of this program. So I took away from that. Again, all in all, they were all positive, but there were some that stood out more than others to me.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
So I did interview all 3 town DPW directors, and they were all very positive. The man in Georgia, the highlight of the conversation with him was that he was, felt like he was doing a lot of things right, and then found out recently that maybe he could be doing a lot better. So I guess you can take that either way. But the guy up in Douglas was super excited to talk about Mr. Wojcik and his enthusiasm for support of DPW operations, and how he would come in the night before they were going to do plowing and bring coffee and see how the guys are doing. A really highly motivated people person. So that was a pretty positive interview. Mr. McConerty reports that, interactions with Mr. Johnson Staub have been limited until recently when he's been the interim town manager, but so far so good. He's very encouraged by the future with Mr. Johnson Staub, should he be elected. And, that was the limited response that I got from the other 2 communities. I really only spoke with the DPW directors in each community, and that was the limit that I had. But all good reviews, so no negativity.
If I may talk about my homework assignment, which was to talk to people about finance. The questions that I asked each of the people that I spoke to about the candidates was, what level of responsibility does this candidate have in the finances in their current role, or for the previous positions, the previous role? In your opinion, how would you describe their knowledge and understanding of your community's finances? Does this person understand the fiscal policies of the governing board and how to implement them into the budget, and any other comments? I reached out to 3 people in Douglas about Mr. Wojcik and didn't hear back. I think that he made it pretty clear, though, in his interviews that he was very knowledgeable about finances. I mean, he dug into us a little bit, which was fine. I appreciated his candor. But I did speak to a couple people in Colorado and in Georgia on behalf of Mr. Renshaw. And in Colorado, they said that he was not involved in final decisions that were presented to elected officials, but he was not in the weeds at all, and the person emphasized that multiple times. They said Colorado has very complex property laws, and that Mr. Renshaw made a real effort to understand them, but in the year and a half that he was there, they don't believe that he completely grasped the nuances. In Georgia, he's considered the budget officer. They said that when he arrived, they needed to implement a new capital improvement plan. In his short time there, he has done that. And the reference felt it was really important to say that he's played he being Mr. Renshaw, has played a huge part in the leadership and development for all of the staff. And I spoke to somebody on behalf of Mr. Johnson Staub who worked with him in Yarmouth, and they said that in Yarmouth he was the, quote, go-to person, for all things related to the budget. He was responsible for town meeting warrant articles, as opposed to here where they're done in collaboration with the finance director and the finance committee. And when he left Yarmouth, his duties were split amongst about 7 people. They also said that he's managed strong infrastructure, and he was known as an encyclopedia with deep knowledge on an array of subjects. So again, I didn't hear back from anybody about Mr. Wojcik, but that's what I heard about Mr. Renshaw and Mr. Johnson Staub.
I didn't really touch on my one-on-one interviews. I spent the majority of that time getting to know the people and asking them how they do things in their town, explaining a little bit about our town, and comparing the differences between how our town works with how their town works, just to kind of have a intimate conversation and get to know the people on a more of a personal level. I didn't spend a lot of time asking specific questions about their knowledge or skill set, just kind of get to know how they do business and what they would expect to do here in Falmouth.
And I did a little of both on the one-on-ones, the personal, but also kind of digging into leadership styles, management styles, what did it look like, how did it play out, how effective were they, and that type of thing. When I did my searches, of course, I chose the schools. Mr. Johnson's job, nothing negative, seen as responsive and available. Definitely at times there are disagreements because you have the school budget as part of the overall town budget. That's pretty normal. The differences were expected and didn't impact the relationship. In Yarmouth, he was considered reasonable and a good soul and decent to work with. In Georgia, the county had been through 4 managers in 4 years. The official was also a member of another board that operated within the town, and it was through that board's work that they got to know the candidate from Georgia and found him to be incredibly helpful, knowledgeable, pleasant, and in that particular district, the school does not work as closely with the town manager. They're set up differently. In Douglas, this reference described Mr. Wojcik as holding the purse strings while balancing the needs of all departments. He went on to describe the candidate as very bright, intelligent, articulate, and understands both finances and politics. He made a reference of how the candidate restructured the teacher contracts by moving the increases from 1.5 to 2% and added an additional $500,000 to the school's budget. The candidate really supports the schools while understanding balancing of the overall town budget. I reached out to Tiverton, Rhode Island 3 times. I never heard back. So again, I don't feel like there was anything negative to say about any one of the candidates.
So should we work backwards and talk about our third candidate?
You certainly may. You can
Well, can
do
I
it the
just,
way you would like. Yes.
see, you just mentioned nothing negative, but I've been an engineering manager, so I've hired engineers and unfortunately had to fire a few of them that really could not pull their weight in a private company. But, one of the indicators I always look at is how many times they do job changes. And by the way, I'm probably could match almost any of them, but in my case, the changes were all in the commercial world where the company itself was changing, even getting bought up by other companies, and I was moving because I didn't see my future as being the same anymore. But at any rate, I just wanted to point out that, when you have a person that's changing jobs so rapidly, one of the questions you have to ask yourself is that person not making a long-term commitment to the organization that they're managing? And in a town, strategic thinking and strategic investment becomes, I think, very important. And the relationships that you develop should be long-term relationships. And that respect that you need to work with people, it needs to grow over time, and so that you have a rapport with each other, and you understand each other, and you can have a dialogue that looks toward consensus and what's in the best interest of the citizens. So I think that looking at the number of job changes kind of indicates the person's ability to gain respect and work with people and do it over a long period of time. So I would just say that that's a factor we should be considering. And I did kind of summarize that in the findings in that sheet that I gave you. So,
If I could say also, that does also impact your ability to accept the mention of the systems and programs that have been put in place, because if it's only a limited time, it's hard to determine how much effectiveness was gained from putting in programs and, making evaluations and so forth. So I wonder how that could really be gauged sufficiently in those short timeframes.
And I would say you need to think about managing people and developing those relationships so that you can grow people to meet the challenges of the town. That doesn't happen in a year's time. You know, the couple of engineers I had to let go, it took 2 years to get to a point where he said, you know, you're just not going to make it in this company because you can't pull your weight. And it just takes a while to actually develop that sense of what that person's potential is and contributions will be.
And you did read the references that Mr. White did provide with us and did address quite a bit of that.
We
Yes, I
did,
did.
we
In
did
his
hear that.
March
I did see
21st
that.
meeting.
Yes,
Yep.
I did.
I will also just caution the board that, you know, the municipal business, when things aren't really working out and people agree to part ways, it's usually good references, no matter what's going on. So I think these have to be viewed cautiously.
Agreed.
Do you have anything to back that up, Doug?
Yeah, I don't
mean,
know if
that's
I agree
that's
with
kind
that.
of a.
That's-
Did anybody tell you that?
No, I've
Do you have
seen,
any evidence of that?
well,
Okay, Mike.
I
No,
can't,
if you do, say it.
it's not evidence particularly here.
Yeah, no,
But what I've seen in my time in government is that when things aren't going as one would hope, and a person is moving along, I think it's not unusual for the departing entity to provide good references. It's a common courtesy.
Even 6 years later, even if they've left two different places 6 years later, giving a glowing recommendation.
Well, you know, you can attribute more weight to certain conditions and certain circumstances, certainly. I agree with you. If there's a lot of time and there's no real gain, of course, I would put more weight on that.
Ms. Scott Price, you wanted to say something.
Oh,
I'm sorry, and I went on.
No, that's fine. I did want to say, well, I don't remember what I was going to say before, but I know what I would like to say now that I have the floor, is that that is for the candidate that I think we're referring to who has multiple jobs. I did ask about that in my one-on-one interview. That was one of the pointed questions that I asked. And for the most recent position, and it's weird, I don't know how much is appropriate to say because.
Right.
Could I just say something to your question, Scott? When I was the chair of the
Wait a minute,
school.
no.
Wait,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, no.
Yeah, let her.
No, it is actually.
No, let
appropriate.
her finish, please.
Fine, go
Ms.
ahead.
Patterson.
No problem.
Yeah, so I don't know, I don't want to divulge too much information because I just don't know how much is appropriate. But I will say the reason for potentially leaving the most recent job was something that I could understand and I could relate to and I could empathize with. And so I felt that the reason that they gave for leaving this most recent position was something that I felt was an appropriate reason and have been in similar shoes myself. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And I just want to clarify, I don't suspect anything that's not, I'm not saying I think there's anything untoward. All I'm saying is, these type of situations, there can be that, so I think we have to just bear that in mind and not put too much weight on those things. I'm just saying, be cautious about that. Not that I have any specific reason, and I'm not going to cite anything that I think is relevant here, only just that is a practice that, to be aware of.
And the point I wanted to use as an example of why people are cautious about their critique of a particular individual that may have been in the organization. I was the chair of the school committee here, and this is when the high school was being built, and all of a sudden, you know, the project was just coming to a crawl. And so the building committee decided it was time to change the architect. Well, I was at a meeting of parents, and I made the comment in that meeting that the original architect wasn't capable of doing the engineering drawings, wasn't capable of managing the project. I never said the name of the architect, but it got pinned in the newspaper because that's how they liven up the stories. And guess what? I got sued for $4 million.
That's exactly right, and that's what I'm cautioning other people about.
Yes. Fortunately,
All right, we're going to keep the conversation among the board.
it got
Please.
dismissed.
Go ahead.
Oh, I know what I was gonna say, we're talking about working backwards. I know you want us to talk about our first and two candidates, but I think maybe it makes sense to talk about our third choice and get that out.
You can, if that's what you'd like, go ahead.
So I thought that Mr. Wojcik from Douglas was obviously very knowledgeable about Massachusetts laws and had a lot of experience in Massachusetts. He visited the town multiple times, which I was impressed with, so he definitely has a commitment. I was cautious about how in the weeds he was, because he is in a small town where I think he said they have 9 firefighters or something, and I just thought, wow, what a huge difference to Falmouth. So yeah, it makes sense that you're going and meeting with your department heads multiple times a week, and it makes sense that you can be really thoughtful about certain things because you have that access all the time. And I just thought that scaling up to the complexities that we have in Falmouth might be a significant challenge. I'm also considering the lack of institutional knowledge that we have in Falmouth right now with the vacancies and the new hires. And so, I'll kind of stop there, but he was the third person that was on my list.
I would agree with you.
Okay.
Well, I'll share that I had him second just because of his enthusiasm. I do agree that there's a big difference between the size of his town and the size of ours, and also that it's easy to have that camaraderie in a smaller group, certainly true. I had Mr. Renshaw at third only because of the fact that, well, 2 things. The turnover on the jobs, which I agree was explained, but yet it still is, it's concerning. And I'm not sure how much, as I mentioned earlier, how much can you really back up your success when the time is limited? So, I mean, ideas are great, but a track record is better. So I had Mr. Renshaw at third, even though he's very likable and very professional. I just didn't feel like he's really a good fit for Falmouth, especially the fact that he's never worked in Massachusetts. So I think there's a learning curve there. I think the type of governments that he's worked in are quite different as well, not just because it's not Massachusetts, but county government in a small, diverse rural area versus a dense population like Falmouth, and the town meeting situation, the fact that our citizenry is so engaged and there's so many people so involved in the government, I think that's going to be a very new thing for him. So I think that the learning curve would be steep. I was also apprehensive about, he seemed very determined about breaking down and analyzing our structure and, doing a comprehensive analysis, which, maybe that's a good thing, but when you come in and you're a new person and you want to break everything down, I just question, maybe that might have been some of the problem in the other 2 jobs, because when you come in and you're new and you want to scrutinize everything, it ruffles feathers. Maybe sometimes they should be ruffled. In our case, I don't think that we have a big systemic problem with our government. I think it's really well run. I made comments when we were beginning the process of having troubles with Mr. Suso. I announced that I don't think this whole town is broken and that we need to fix everything, and I still believe that's true. So I was a little...
I didn't take it as him coming in to change everything. I took it as him coming in to see how our structures were set up and to learn them. I guess I didn't see him as he was going to break them down or shake them up or change them.
Okay.
But his way was to get to know the structures, how they work, and really learn them, and then figure out if there were ways that they could be done differently, better, more efficiently, more effectively. But I didn't get the sense that he was coming in to break it down.
Okay.
I just
I
interpreted
guess I took that from the one-on-one
Oh.
more than the interview, the public interview. So that was my reasoning to put him at third, and I had Mr. Wojcik at second. And I might as well go on since I've already named 3 and 2. I think Mr. Johnson-Staub is absolutely prepared for this. I think he's earned it. I think he's worked here for, is it 6 or 7 years or more?
6.
Yeah. So, he's made a big change already in the time that he's been interim town manager, under pressure, short-staffed. I think he's been very effective. He brought the budget to us early. We had multiple planning sessions that I thought were really effective. He brought the fire department synopsis to us in a way that never been brought, even though we struggled and fought about the numbers and the questions for quite some time. And I think he put it in a really comprehensive plan and brought it to us. I think I sense a feeling of relaxation and optimism in Town Hall that I haven't felt in a while, which is surprising because he's operating under duress. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Mr. Johnson Staub is prepared to take this job. I think his history is solid. He spends a lot of time on a job. He's not a person who's likely to change. I'm very concerned about taking a chance on a new person, and then I'm pretty sure that if we hire a new person, we're probably going to lose Mr. Johnson Staub, because when he took the chance in Yarmouth and didn't get it, he moved on, and that's understandable, especially after the amount of time he's been here. And I'm really concerned about the loss of institutional knowledge. Should we go another direction and then lose him? And if things don't work out, then where are we? So I'm a little cautious to go where we don't know where it's new ground. I'm very happy and excited to work with Mr. Johnson Staub. I think he's the guy for the job, so I guess I'm going to leave it at that. I got a lot more comments that I might bring up later if the conversation goes further, but that's my take on it.
Doug, you don't think there's a disconnect with the community with Mr. Staub?
I don't think so. I think there's a hangover from his work with Mr. Suso, the previous town manager. I think that a lot of people maybe infer what they know from assignments that he had to execute in his previous role.
You never heard any complaints about it personally from your constituency?
I've had an awful lot of emails in support of Mr. Johnson Staub and comments
That
in
wasn't
the
the question, though.
comment. No, I haven't.
Okay.
I've had one person, and I can maybe guess that that person's not feeling like they're getting this level of service that they need personally. No, I really haven't.
I feel like I've spoken a lot already, so.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to a lot of people, and in this community, I mean, I understand what you guys are saying. And we've had emails, we've had people walk up to us and say, at least we know what we have with him. If you investigated Mike Renshaw, that you know that he's collaborative, he's creative, and when you get statements like he is for his community, his people. The guy that talked to me about the leadership program reinstituted how he treated all of his staff by what was instituted there. I don't know where you're getting your information from, and it may be legit. I know who I talked to, and I know to a man 5 different places. I look at it as an attribute with different things. Sam just admitted to it. How many jobs does Sam have? And Sam's identified the fact that when he knew it was time to move on and he wasn't being effective, he moved on. What makes him any different than Mike Renshaw? Has anybody told you he was fired?
No.
So how can you characterize him as nefarious on his motivation for leaving his
I
job?
certainly didn't do that.
Growing up, if you looked at his resume, he started off in the service.
Yeah.
So he's a veteran, so he understands veterans' rights.
Yeah.
And he was a police officer, so he understands both sides of that. He had a huge community involvement in a southern state where far outshadow the racial component of what we deal with here. So he understands that. I asked Peter what the racial component of our police department was, and he didn't know. Don't you think that you have to have a connection with the community outside of this building? And in 6 or 7 years, he should be more up to speed with what Joe Normal wants, as well as what looks good on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I'm an integrity guy. I told them all I'm a meat and potatoes guy. You can't get community involvement if people don't want to come here. You see the same people at every event, and those are the people that make the decisions for this town. They're the ones that send the emails. If you don't do this, you don't do that. What about the people that the rest of the community that expects us to have insight into who we believe can be creative, collaborative, and inclusive? You wouldn't have people complaining about the things that we don't do. And when I asked them a question, what would you do on day one? What was it? Do you remember what the answer was?
Yeah, he's already doing it.
in his opinion, he's doing it. Ask some other people. Business as usual. Not good enough for me. I want somebody that wants to reach ahead. He's already explained the fact that he wants this to be his forever home. This is what his career has culminated to. He said it to every one of us. And to mischaracterize his intentions for landing here is disingenuous to me. I mean, I know it's your opinion, but that's not how I listened to it. I looked at it, his experiences in vast places where he wasn't discharged from his job. He continuously climbed the ladder to culminate in a situation like this. I felt gratified that somebody took enough interest. How many other, neither one of them used the words inspire and excited and all of that. Do you think he's just a good interviewer? I don't. I think he's the real deal. So he would be my number one.
Okay,
And I guess, Sam, I just want to go back to something you said. You said there's a difference between walking the walk and talking the talk. And I assume you were referencing him about his talk of leadership?
I actually, right, that is correct.
Okay. And I didn't
but-
see it that way.
Well, I reviewed his, the extra brochure that he gave us.
Yep.
I mean, it just is actually, it'd be like Cliff Notes that you'd get for a.
It just means he used it for his leadership. I didn't take it that way.
That
And
may
I
be
didn't think he was just saying that to convince you that he was a leader. I didn't, so I have an issue with that. I didn't see him that way at all. And I also watched the way he engaged the community in the meet and greet, because that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted it. I wanted the community to have an opportunity. I also wanted to see how each candidate reached out to people and spoke with people. And that, to me, is something that is incredibly important to move this town forward. And I agree with you, Mr. Zelinski, when you say somebody who's got to inspire, somebody who has got to get this staff, because I don't hear it the way you hear it. In terms of how it functions right now in Town Hall. The feedback I've had has not been as positive as what you've had. And so I think Peter is incredibly bright. I think he is a great manager. I'd like to see someone help us lead. And to me, those are different functions. A leader has to be able to manage and lead, but a manager manages. They don't have to be at that extra step to lead.
Okay.
From my perspective.
I'd just like to comment that I feel like both of these other applicants are super qualified and good people, and my comments earlier were not to be representing as Mr. Renshaw as nefarious. And I hope that's not the case, and
I hope he doesn't.
I hope you don't,
that.
well, you're the one who said it, not me.
Well, because that's what it sounded like to me.
Okay, well, I'm just saying
When the guy
that,
got up here, we asked all three of them, Doug, name a time where you broke the public's faith, all right? You've got two of them, one skipped over it, one said, I've never done it, and one guy bared his soul, knowing he was the dark horse in this, that he was gonna have people say, well, he hops around a lot. He sat there for 20 minutes and told us probably one of the most embarrassing public humiliations of his professional career, openly.
yeah,
If that's not good enough and integrity-filled enough for you, I'm sorry for you, but it was for me.
yeah.
And that's what this community is thirsting for, at least a great population of this community that talk to me. They want somebody that they feel like they can trust, and it's not just business. If it was just a business, then I would see your point. But this is a community run by this town hall.
I would say if we didn't have Mr. Johnson Staub here, I would certainly entertain either one of these other candidates. But I feel like Mr. Johnson Staub has an edge over them with his experience, his institutional knowledge of the town, and his performance of late as the acting town manager.
And I would say that Massachusetts, and the Cape, and all of its issues that all of the risks that we're trying to address and what have you, is very unique compared to the other environments of the other. And you indicated that nobody was supporting Peter Johnson Staub, but we got.
I didn't say nobody.
We got, from people I highly respect, came forward and said, I really believe in this guy.
Right.
And I want to say about leadership, they don't have to always be out in front. The one thing I like about Peter is that he asks the kind of questions that maybe we weren't thinking about. so that we can formulate, a sense of where we want to go based on questions that we might not be asking
Sam, I don't need a
ourselves.
lecture. I have 100.
No,
I have 100 employees. I don't need a lecture on leadership.
I'm
I
sorry.
recognize it when
Well,
I
wait a
see
minute.
it. You're
Wait a
not
minute.
going to talk me
Scott,
out of it.
Scott, who's lecturing? You're the one that's got the
Well,
more,
I mean-
the stronger, louder voice. I'm just trying to have a reasoned discussion here. And you don't jump all over me. You're
I'm
not even giving me a
jumping on
chance
you,
to
but
get
I don't
everything
need a
out.
lecture on what
Okay,
leadership
let's-
looks like
let's
to
come
me.
back. Let's come back.
Madam Chair, if I may. I made some notes.
Absolutely.
I probably lost more sleep over this than I probably want to admit. So I made some notes, and I would just kind of like to go through them now that we're talking about all of the candidates. And so with Mr. Renshaw, I thought he was a clear leader and very engaging. His references that I spoke to, and also in the references provided by the consultant, they cited how much he supports and empowers his employees, and he doesn't micromanage. I really respected and appreciated that he worked for several years in community engagement, and I appreciated his idea for aligning the departments with the strategic plan and having KPIs, key performance indicators, and whatnot. My main concerns were that he has no Massachusetts experience. It would be a steep learning curve for sure on many fronts. His financial reference, as I mentioned earlier, in Colorado, said that in the 18 months he was there, he did not quite grasp the Colorado rules and regulations. And I don't know how Colorado compares to Massachusetts, but I have moments where people tell me something and I don't want to admit that I didn't already know that. So I know that there's a lot to learn here. He did not have any experience working with committees, which is something we talked about when I asked the question on the one-on-one interview about working with committees. So I think that might be a little bit of a learning curve in appreciating their role versus the role of town employees versus the role of the select board, which, as I mentioned multiple times tonight, like, we have our own work to do in understanding that. And as I mentioned, his short tenure, of course, was cause for concern in some ways, but through the one-on-ones, I understood his side of the story. Overall, no doubt, I think that he could absolutely do the job and be really effective. He may have the tools, personality, experience to help with recruitment and retention. He doesn't have knowledge of Massachusetts, again, with a short-term finance director, new HR manager, and not much institutional support, that was a concern. To talk about Peter, he's been able to keep Falmouth relatively steady despite all these vacancies. He's obviously very knowledgeable about the town, the charter, the Massachusetts laws, has experience with our budget. I know he's made some mistakes in, like, not getting us some information, and for example, there was a document that we had to review today. I tried to give him some grace, considering at one point he was doing 3 or 4 jobs at once. I'd like to think that if he was fully staffed, he would do better. I think that he does work well generally with the community, people that I've spoken to, and the feedback that we've recently got. I do think that he could improve in his leadership, which is something that I know, Nancy, that you just mentioned. I do wonder how much of that is that he hasn't been able to do that because of the situation that he's been in as assistant and then now intern with all these vacancies, or if it's something that he needs to work on in general. And so what I'm thinking about with weighing these 2 candidates is Mr. Renshaw has a vision and he's got leadership experience, but he's going to have a steep learning curve. Whereas Peter maybe needs to work on his leadership experience, but he has all the knowledge. So which is more important for Falmouth now, and which is going to be more important for Falmouth in the next 5 to 10 years? And I don't think those are the same answer. So those are my general thoughts.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you believe in our committees? Do you believe we have a strong finance committee?
I do.
You think they're knowledgeable?
I do.
You think they're capable of bringing someone up to speed at a rapid rate?
I think they could, yeah.
Do you think that there are other committees that could do the same?
Yeah, I think there would be a lot of reliance on town council for some legal
Do you
things.
think we have good town council?
I think we have excellent town council, yeah.
So that's part of what I considered as well with his closing the gap on. But delegation has a lot to do with, if you believe in your committees and you believe in your departments and you strengthen your departments and the will to be able to do their job, that's where leadership comes in, and micromanagement or feeling like I have to cover every single doorknob in here allows you. Leadership's about delegating and being responsible for delegation, not doing everything.
Yep, agreed.
One of my questions individual questions was about the 30-plus committees that we have. And the one person that was the most excited about working with those committees, because from his perspective, that's how you engage the community. And I thought that was a really interesting answer. He said that you have so many committees that do so much work, that have so much talent, because he'd gone through and looked at all of our committees. He said that is an incredible community engagement piece. That's how you get the community engaged in government. And I thought that was really an important insight that also spoke to his leadership.
And who was that?
Mike Brenshaw.
Okay.
Well, let me just simply say, my own experience in hiring, and unfortunately having to fire candidates, that and it wasn't always some of the hires were pushed on me, and I had to take them in and try to make them productive engineers. What I learned was that the more I knew about a candidate, the better off I could manage the risk that that person wasn't going to be productive. And when I asked that question to myself, you know, I know we've brought these folks in, we've interviewed, we've talked to them a lot, but there's still a lot about their backgrounds that we don't know, and who people will not talk to you about because they're afraid of being in the same position I got myself into, even though it wasn't entirely my fault, and I was doing my job as the chair of the school committee at the time. But when you have somebody with so many good qualities, you have to think about the risk of bringing somebody in. It's going to take them a while to come up to speed, learn all the ins and outs of the laws, the regulations, the people, the staff, and everyone who's doing the job. Do you want to take the risk of having somebody?
Who's doing the job in your opinion?
Excuse me?
No, but Sam, you.
All right, never mind. Go ahead.
I look at the school superintendent. She came from Delaware. And people said, oh, she doesn't know mass, ed law. Well, so I have a little bit of a difficult time with that argument, because I think it can happen and people can do it well.
Okay, agreed.
So but it's hard. I see what you're saying in terms of the risk, Sam. I absolutely do.
And what if we find out in, 6, 8 months, a year, that it's not a good fit, that it isn't working out? Now we've lost the institutional knowledge that we have, and I think it's a big setback for us. So a bird in the hand with
I
two in the
disagree
bush.
with the bird in the hand.
I've heard that a couple times this week.
I disagree with the devil you know. I'm sorry. I don't agree with that. I don't like that.
But that's not what he said. I think of it in terms of the positive contributions that Peter Johnson-Staub has brought us, and I think he will leave, and I wouldn't blame him a bit. I mean, because he's going to look for a job where people appreciate him and bring him in. But I don't think it's a question of compromising anything. I think what we're seeing right now is such a positive change and such a increase in productivity of our staff. We're going to give this guy some credit. He's the kind of person we want.
I'd like to know what you folks think is not working right now, because I haven't heard a lot of comments. I haven't heard hardly any of negativity about the functionality that Mr. Johnson-Staub's provided. So what specifically, and why aren't we seeing any emails or any comments? I'm just surprised that you feel as
Because some of
strongly.
it's under union negotiation right now, but we can't talk about.
And there are several people who have come up to me, because I do think Peter does a really, really good job. I have had people who work within the system who don't think he's a good manager, but not the leader that they want.
But in this town, the leadership often comes out of the committees. I mean, we have top-notch experts that serve on those committees and give us a huge bang, for nothing. I mean, we don't pay them a thing. And I see a manager as basically using all of those resources, if you will, and integrating them together to give us the most productive, changes in the community. And you don't have to be out in front being the person with all those ideas. What you need to be doing is gleaning those ideas and bringing them back and integrating them together and figuring out how to get things done.
That's my interpretation of leadership, Sam, and that's what I think Mike Renshaw exemplifies.
Okay, but I feel like I can't have the same confidence that you do, but
That's
I
why
do
you
have
get a
that
vote and
confidence.
I get one.
I do have the confidence in Peter, because I see what the changes are that have occurred. And a manager has got to be a people manager. And I guess you're getting negative comments that I'm not getting, but I'm getting virtually all very constructive comments from people that I really respect. And that's, the source is important to me as well.
Could you
Well-
be more specific about the source?
Well, I agree, but it's not, I'm not going to put out the names of people that have called me or asked to speak with me, or.
Or
I'm
people that
not-
work here?
I'm absolutely not going to do that. That's not right. And so I think the feedback, maybe the feedback's balanced. I don't know.
All right, well, I've
Can I just
said everything I
Yes.
need to say. I'll keep my mouth shut.
take a moment and remind the board that we owe it to the people of Falmouth to make a decision tonight.
I agree.
And it has to be a 4-1 vote. And so we have to come to some sort of consensus, because right now it doesn't sound like we are anywhere close to that.
I agree.
So
too.
I don't know what to do about that, but I just want to remind us of the situation that we're in and what we have to do this evening. Or what I feel like we have to do this evening. Yeah, I think that Mr. Renshaw could probably come in here and lead us in a different direction. He had a lot of really good ideas and things that he has implemented in his other positions. But the learning curve is really what concerns me. And we do have excellent committees, and we do have an excellent town council office. To me, it's how long is it going to take for him to learn everything, from working with committees to just learning the culture of the town of Falmouth, to learning about Massachusetts laws and learning our budget and all of those things. And the lack of institutional knowledge we have. I don't think we can rely on Peter to stay around if he doesn't have the position. So if we have a new person who's going to be then hiring a new assistant town manager, we have a new HR director, we have a new director of finance who we already know is leaving us in a short amount of time, and that genuinely concerns me. I think the concerns that have been brought up about Peter, that I have heard from people and that are being shared, I think are manageable. I think there are things that he can work on. There are things that I genuinely think that will improve when he has more staff. So that's where I am.
He's barely had a chance to show us what he can do. I mean, it's been all pressure in this short time that he's been the acting town manager.
Like, how hard is it to get exit interviews? To find out why we're losing staff?
Well, when has he been in a position to be able to do it?
Since he's been in charge?
Doing all these jobs that he's been covering?
How hard is it to request an exit interview when somebody gives you their notice? And inform the board of why we're losing staff? I think that's a fair question to both of you, or all three of you.
Well, I think when Peter was asked to take on this position, I think Nancy and I, as chair and vice chair, agreed not to ask for any new stuff. Just man the helm, keep us from going under, stay the course, and we didn't ask for new projects, new assignments, and new initiatives. We didn't ask for exit interviews.
We've asked for exit interviews for a long time.
It's in strategic planning.
For a long time.
If I recall correctly, I believe that there was an exit interview that he did with somebody in the water, who worked in water, who went to private industry. And I know that who was it?
He was the department head for the water department.
Cahal.
Yes, it was. Cahal, correct. And there was another one that he did not do, but he designated the HR consultant to do. Those are the only ones that I remember, but I know of those two.
So when you're saying we've asked for a long time, we asked the previous town manager, and I will agree with that. But has there been recent requests for specific exit
I
interviews?
believe there have been recent requests. Am I not accurate?
No, you're right, yep.
Yeah, I do want to say, though, looking over your shoulder is one thing, but preventing those exits from occurring to the extent that you can by the environment that you're creating for those employees to make them productive, that they get rewarded appropriately, is the more important thing, is to stem the outflow. If, it's more than those individuals, like myself, that basically said, this organization is about to go through drastic change. Different corporation has just bought our division. What's my future here? They're bringing in all these guys from the outside. Is there someplace else that I can achieve and grow? I mean, that's going to happen, and I don't think we can stop it. But I think, I place less faith. I think it is important that the manager does that, but I think it's also important if you can change the way your organization works and the culture of the work, so that people feel like they're appreciated and they're being encouraged to do more productive things or be more productive. That's the most important role of a manager.
You're singing my song.
Yeah, okay, well,
All
good.
right, but you're singing it with the wrong,
But
instrument. I think that's what we do need, Sam.
But I don't, but to have a formal reporting of an exit interview is one thing, but provide that kind of support to your employees to make them more productive for the benefit of the town, the citizens of the town, that's the critical role. And I've gotten nothing but good feedback from people that have talked to me, and most of them have come up to me and say, I just want to tell you, and I won't mention names because I don't think we should, especially when they're staff members, but, I feel so much better about my job, that I'm going to be more productive, I'm going to get more things done, I'm getting more support than I ever had before, or at least in the last 10 years. And I think that is an important role of a manager, is to make your constituents more productive and more satisfied with what they're doing.
But he doesn't have
I
a
agree.
constituency.
I
We
agree.
do. He's an employee.
No, his staff is his constituency, plus the rest of the town. He's got to be both. I mean, he serves the town, but his staff have got to be the people that he grows the most in order to address the town's, the citizens' problems and issues. So I know, I see it, yes, you need to do those, exit interviews, but you do that to learn about what you need to do to help your staff. And you can say goodbye to them, but let's make sure that the rest of the staff is getting the support they need to feel good and rewarded about their jobs, and that they're going in the right direction to better support the community.
And you can get some of that information from an exit interview.
Absolutely.
I mean,
No,
that's what you get from
But-
an exit interview. Let me finish.
Yeah.
When you take an exit interview and you find out why someone's leaving or what, and maybe it is because they're going into private practice, or maybe it is that they don't like the commute. Certainly we hear that.
Sure.
But when you hear that they perhaps don't feel listened to, or that the communication doesn't go both ways, there's a data point to work with. And so to me, that's information that's really important in creating an environment where people are more productive.
I agree with you. The only thing I heard was that we weren't getting a report back from Peter on those exit interviews. Not that he wasn't doing them, and maybe he was doing them and getting the information, or maybe he understood the circumstances as to why that employee left. And I just, a formal report doesn't necessarily do it for me. I need the support that basically makes sure that they feel productive and qualified and recognized and appreciated. And that's the part I want to see most in a
I'm not
manager.
looking for a formal report. That is not what I'm looking for.
I
I'm
misunderstood.
looking for the feedback that will make us a stronger, more cohesive organization. That's what I'm looking for. The formal report means nothing to me. But you can gather data when someone's leaving. We've had a lot of people leave, and that's where your institutional knowledge walks out the door as well.
Absolutely.
It isn't just one person. We've had other people who have had institutional knowledge who walked out. And it was a shame that exit interviews weren't done in those particular cases, because again, that feedback would have helped us immensely.
But there's been less lately.
If you've been in the job 6 years, if he couldn't do anything as the assistant town manager because his previous boss wouldn't let him, what did he do in 6 years? He doesn't know the community outside of this building. He's admitted that.
I didn't get that.
No,
What did he say?
I disagree.
He read. He had to read what he knew about this town. He had to have notes. And if you I've watched the interviews back 5 times, all 3 of them, 5 times. And I watched for who spoke from the heart, who looked at us in the face, who looked at the ceiling, who admitted to downfalls and how they repaired them. I asked that question 2 or 3 different ways and got the same answer, never. So I'm looking for a little more humility as well, because when you show people respect and humility, you get it back. And you guys, I understand where you're coming from. We know what we have here. Well, if you know what you have, does that mean there's nothing better out there, or you're not willing to reach for the brass ring for something better? What if it is better? What if it is more collaborative, and we fill some of these positions and get people back here to work?
Let me say about the...
But to your question, though, to reach for that ring, I'm thinking about what's best for the community.
Me too.
Do we take the risk? If we have somebody that's productive, that's appreciated, that people have rapport with and respect with, and I think, Peter's come out of that, that lid that Julian had him under, because you can only do so much when you're superior. Is basically, the load that's on you and basically quashing your creativity. And I'm telling you, I'm just really impressed with how Peter has come out and is really taking charge and is doing the right things. I mean, and hiring the right kind of people. I've been pretty impressed with the people he's hired. And that's what you want, is somebody that builds a team and develops that mutual working relationship and respect for each other and know what you can depend on in each other. And that takes time. So I'm not seeing it the same way you guys are. But,
I would say also about the interview, the public interview, I don't see anything wrong with having prepared remarks and a plan. That's how he stayed on time. That's how he had time left to address his comments at the end. The other 2 gentlemen got a little excited and talked a lot, a little longer, I think, than they intended to, and didn't have time for closing comments, which, I mean,
You know
that's...
how long your question was, though?
I know, but it was really only one question. It just had a few aspects to it.
Hey, the bottom line is I don't want to be argumentative with you guys. I'm a conviction guy, and I'm willing. I know who I think can lead this town forward. I'm willing to take the slings and arrows that goes with that. I've never backed off of a decision that I had a gut feeling about and then backed it up with hours and hours and hours of research. All right? If you guys, you're good with what you have and you don't want to do better, I mean, we've been in a holding pattern here in this town for how long? Because we can't get people in the office. We can't get people to come work here. We can't get applicants because of the guy that's in here, whether that's good or bad. He had an advantage of being here for 6 years, which put him in the upper echelon of the search committee. The search committee, the consultant, so you guys seem to forget, all those entities put him in this pile of 3.
What do you mean, forget?
No, I'm not just saying, I'm not being demonstrative, Doug. I'm just saying, he's here for a reason. Other people recognize, people that we entrusted, recognize the fact that this guy was warranted, given all of those things. They also saw something in him. And they saw what I see.
I respect the man, and like I said, if we already didn't have a highly qualified guy with better, in my opinion, better credentials of functioning in Massachusetts effectively, I would certainly entertain either of those 2 gentlemen. And I think Mr. Renshaw's career is very interesting. I remember when we were asked to go and review the documents to see if, there had been any people overlooked that we should have taken more seriously. Mr. Renshaw's things stood right out to me, and I said to Mr. White, I said, I certainly noticed one that was really impressive, and Mr. Wojcik too. Those 2 stood out to me, and it's not surprising to me that they came to the top of the search, because they are very impressive gentlemen.
I mean, I won't take up any more of the board's time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this in closing for me. Peter does a lot of things very well, but he doesn't do everything. And some of that is instinctive in leadership. My whole career, I've followed people in leadership, military, law enforcement. I recognize it when I see it. And if you can motivate people and communicate with them thoroughly, you can do great things. I know that sounds melodramatic, and you guys may be in your safe zone, that's fine. I'm just telling you. You just can't discount somebody because you don't know enough about him without doing the research. The information was there. I'm never going to change your mind, and you're not going to change mine, Sam.
I tell you what tips Peter up over the top to me is his communication skills.
Really?
Yes, indeed. You look at the memos that he puts out, there is so much nuance and understanding there that really impresses, and that's true in his writing, but it's also true in his presentations. He's very direct and very convincing. And that comes from understanding the problems and then being able to convince you that he's got the grasp and that he's letting you know what the basis is for what he's actually, trying to advocate for. I've been just really impressed with his communication skills, and I have, I'm 50 years in private and government, and I've rarely seen anybody that can condense down some very difficult, complicated things in as effective a way as he does.
I agree with you. He does some things very well.
And I will say also that, I know you mentioned earlier that when you asked him about that question about, what have you done that has embarrassed you or caused you embarrassment, and nothing came to mind. At that moment, I imagine later he probably thought of something and wished he could have thought of it at the time. But what I will say is, over these years that I've known Peter, when he does have any time that he makes any kind of mistake or an error in judgment, and somebody points it out, he's very willing to revisit it. And he always thinks carefully, and he sometimes changes course, because if he's brought new information that puts a new light on it that he didn't consider, I find him to be very willing to admit mistakes and correct them.
I agree he owns it.
Yeah.
And will correct them.
Yep.
And I'm not, although an email said that I'll have to explain, why I didn't want Peter or something. I think Peter's great. I think he's done a really nice job. I think we can go a step higher. And I think that Mike Renshaw is the person. And I have definitely done my research and asked pointed questions and been on the phone with the consultant to say, what is this? And every single time, I got answers that I said, oh, okay, because I thought, I was wondering what that was about. I do think Peter's been great. I have really enjoyed working with him. I never feel like I need to make a decision based on someone else's potential decision. I've never been someone that, if I'm going to take this risk, well, I don't want to take this risk because someone's going to leave. I don't believe that. It's not how I've conducted myself. We can have somebody new come in if people choose to leave. That's up to them. The organization is not going to fall apart. I disagree with you on that. The organization will continue to go. Does it take him more time to get up to speed? Absolutely. Is he bright enough to do it? I think he is. And again, I go back to hiring a superintendent from Delaware, and people said, oh, why would we? Well, they took the risk, and it's worked out. And I think he's the one.
Well, I think passing him over kind of hurts us as a board, because I think he's shown that he can do it, and I think he's earned the respect and the position. So I think that it would be detrimental to us going forward to overlook this gentleman who's done so well for us.
And done such a huge job of covering so many different positions. That's what impresses me, is he's doing
why are the
three
vacancies
person's
there?
job. I'm sorry, but,
Okay, but you and I see it differently, Sam.
okay, I guess, obviously.
And
I agree we shouldn't make decisions based on if someone's going to leave or not. I think that's an absolutely
Yeah.
valid point.
I'm with you. Oops. Well,
May I address the board? I'd like to help you with your situation. I don't want to accept the position without the support of two of your members. I've seen a 3-2 vote tear our community apart, and I would like to withdraw my candidacy at this time.
Guess that ends it.
We hadn't voted.
Well, I guess that was worth losing sleep over.
That's unfortunate when we haven't voted. What's the preference of the board?
Madam Chair, I'd make the motion to appoint Mike Renshaw to the position of town manager.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Well, it's too bad.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor by roll call.
I guess it's brown eye because we just lost our town manager.
Mr.
Patterson, no.
Ms. Scott Price?
Scott Price, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Zelinski, aye.
I move we adjourn.
Seconded.
Motion to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Zelinski. All those in favor?
Aye.